The man approached the Duke and demanded that he return Saint Dinah. The Duke only chuckled in response. He also noted that he did not understand at all what the man was talking about. The man insisted that Duke Devon hand over the saint, since it was he who took her from the temple. According to him, she is just a low woman, and her place is in the temple. Without her, he faces enormous difficulties. The Duke asked him again what he meant by the expression, low woman. Then, the man explained that a nearly awakened saint was worth 1,000,000 errands. If the Duke returns Saint Dinah to them, they will pretend that nothing happened. Patrick collapsed to the floor and couldn't understand why the Duke was behaving this way. He said that he was not going to tolerate this any longer and pulled out his sword. Podvig wanted to say something, but the Duke did not let him open his mouth. The Duke held his sword to Patrick's throat, claiming to be protecting his daughter. He was amazed that Patrick dared to speak to him in such a tone. It seemed they were counting on him turning a blind eye. Patrick told the Duke to think again about his decision. It was a crime against God himself and a declaration of war on the temple. The Duke replied that he understood and admitted that he was wrong. Then Patrick remarked that he had always considered the Duke to be clever, but he immediately cut off his hand. Everyone immediately rushed to Patrick, and the Duke said that this is where it should have started, and asked to listen carefully. Her name is not Dinah. First of all, she's not a saint. She's his daughter, and her name is Esther. If they speak in that tone again, then the Duke will truly unleash war against them. The maid was looking for Mrs. Esther. The weather had already turned cold, and it was time for her to return home. She saw Mrs. Esther walking across the grass and couldn't understand why the lady was so interested in it. After this, Esther turned to her and said that she was already leaving. The lady came out and greeted Saint Raphael. The Duke remarked that he couldn't even believe that she was really here. He also noted that she did not need to pray for Esther. The lady said that even though she had become a saint, she still could not give up prayers. This child is dear to her. She lives in her heart, so she will continue to pray for her. The Duke remarked that Lady Raphael was so kind that he was simply amazed, even in relation to a monster. Raphael approached Esther and asked how she was feeling. The Duke did not understand how she could be so kind to this girl. Raphael said that she had a lot to do, a ton of work. She noticed that Esther was rapidly weakening and needed her help. Turning to her, Raphael remarked that she was a very bad girl. She asked how it happened that this time there was less strength than in previous times. She might be trying to set her up. Then maybe it's worth cutting deeper. After this, a man approached the saint and said that she should not get her hands dirty. He would do it for her. He asked permission to do this dirty work for her. Raphael happily agreed. Khalid, it's completely unclear how he is able to do this to Esther. The saint told him to collect correctly. This time, she needed more. The holy sword, strengthened by divine blessing, was in his hands. Esther was in so much pain that she couldn't bear it anymore. They collected her holy power from her. A few minutes later, the Duke approached Raphael and handed her a jar. She drank it to regain at least some of her holy power. As always, Esther's strength was astonishing. Raphael approached her and asked if it really seemed unfair. She noted that she was the only one who could complain here. After all, she didn't even understand why he went down to the dungeon every day and drank her blood. It's all because Esther took what should have rightfully belonged to Raphael. Because Esther dared to be born. Raphael has already noted that if someone thinks this is unfair, then he should pray to the goddess. Who knows? Maybe she will have mercy and forgive her sins. As Raphael left, she said goodbye and wished Esther well. And she added that she would definitely come back again. Austin Empire. Here the divine power of the holy and the influence of the monarch are approximately equal. Before the empire was blessed by the light of the goddess, chaos reigned in it. It was the era of disease and suffering. Monsters were killing people. The streets were covered with corpses. It seemed there was no more hope. There were monsters everywhere that were almost impossible to deal with. But suddenly, everyone saw some kind of light. However, they saw the mistress, their lady. Espedo descended from heaven in blood and despair. They decided that there was no need to despair now. After all, the mistress of light was with them. Everyone wished long life to the lady, the mistress of Espeto. The saint helped the inhabitants of the empire drive out the darkness. Her arrival marked the beginning of a century of prosperity. The reborn empire entered a golden age. The emperor ordered the construction of a temple in honor of the savior. Dawn and joy began for all residents. For all but one. The women came and said it was time to eat. They didn't understand why Esther was chained. But it's not customary to talk about this out loud. The newbie doesn't know yet. This isn't just a person, but a monster. It's not for nothing that they're keeping her locked up. They said they would hold her down so that the creature wouldn't bite off anything, and the other one would have to pour food down her throat. Their gazes met, and the girl could not believe that there was a monster in front of her. Then Annie heard a voice that said that if she could hear her, she should free her. A voice called her to come closer. The other girls didn't understand what Annie was doing. They were simply horrified when they saw that she had unleashed this monster. Dina looked at Annie and said that she was a good girl. She thanked her for everything and added that, in order to die, she needed them to move away. The women realized that they urgently needed to call the priestess. They realized that the monster had bitten off its tongue and was now dead. Such a lonely and miserable death for a true saint. This is already the 14th death. When she opened her eyes, Rafian was standing in front of her, asking if Dina was okay. Of course, Dina was a little surprised to see her. They were sitting on the same bench. This was the temple's study room. Rafian noticed that Dina was a bit too pale. Dina said she just didn't feel well. She also thanked Rafian for her concern. Rafian replied that it was sad for her to say this. They are friends, and friends should take care of each other. She thought Dina thought so too. Once upon a time, Dina believed this smile and thought that they were really friends. But one day Rafian said that it was just ridiculous to consider them friends. She emphasized that she never considered Dina her friend for a second. Dina, in her words, was just a naive orphan. Rafian didn't understand how Dina didn't see that they were from different worlds. Dina should know her place. Her face was lifeless. Rafian added that perhaps she should ask the priestess to let her take a little rest. Dina burst into tears and agreed. She promised to do it. Then she added that she would go to the priestess. The other women didn't understand why Rafian was even talking to this girl. She was so dirty. Her hands and feet were just awful. There was a real gulf between them. Dina just liked Rafian, that's all. But she shouldn't have become the next saint. The woman asked Dina again why she was there, and what had happened this time. Dina complained that she had a headache and needed medicine urgently. The woman noted that she had no advocate, which meant she had to work twice as hard as others, and that constant complaints were simply unbearable. But despite this, they still gave her medication, and she left. Again and again she was reborn, and could not understand why all this had happened to her. She had no idea why she couldn't just die, but now was not the time to think about it. I needed to look at what date it was today. No matter how much she protested, this place did not change. Her diary lay in front of her. The last entry was dated August 4th, 381. But now it was already 1981, not 1982. The 12th and 13th times she returned were in April 82, shortly before the death of the current saint. Now something has changed. Perhaps this is the last time. Although it's unlikely, there was no point in expecting anything. there will still be disappointment. It didn't matter what time she returned. Escaping from the temples was still impossible. No matter how many attempts she made, none of them were successful. It hurt. She really hoped it was the last time. She wanted to commit suicide right then and there. But when she cut herself, she saw how divine power manifested within her. Of course, the holy power heals everything, even her suffering. She can only harm herself if she completely loses her power, and in the temple they are strictly monitoring her, so nothing will happen. Only if someone else kills her will she be able to leave, or if she is constrained and weakened. She had no idea how much longer she would have to live this terrible life. Dina approached the statue of the ruler. This place used to be really dear to her. Then she asked for at least a little food because she was hungry. Suddenly, someone spoke to her, and she was very surprised. The man immediately realized that there was holy power in her. The priest she met by chance was not particularly friendly, but at least from then on, she no longer had to go hungry. She was shown her room and was amazed. She was told to keep quiet, and she was truly grateful for that. All because for the first time in her life, she felt what warmth and comfort were. But soon, she lost everything. She never understood why the mistress had given her this power. It was also not at all clear why she was sent to Earth in the first place. She was tired of being a bargaining chip and begged to be taken back. She didn't want to live anymore. It was unbearably hard for her. Thinking about this, for some reason she remembered the temple festival. Now she knew exactly how one could die. The lady was always invited to the festival. The temple festival took place only once a year. The heads of the 4 most powerful families of the empire were required to visit it. Among them should have been Duke Devon Tarisha. He has never lost a war, and his army in the past has never left even a blade of grass behind. He was a war-mad killer, and if Esther had attacked him, she would have certainly died. Suddenly, someone pushed her while she was thinking, and the girl fell to the ground. She was sharply told to look around. She had spilled all the apples. Esther immediately apologized and began to put them back together. Due to the healing effect of the holy energy, she could not die on her own. Therefore, she needed to somehow provoke the Archduke in order to die at his hands. As she walked along the terrace, Khalid called her. She was surprised to see him, and he simply smiled back at her. Khalid asked where she was going. Khalid Demroy was the son of an influential aristocrat and everyone's favorite. She also liked him for his care. Esther smiled, although he had changed a lot since becoming the Holy Knight Raphaean. He no longer helped her and obeyed only his mistress. Even though he helped her get out of hell, she considered him a hypocrite. He asked why Dina looked so depressed. The girl turned away and replied that she was fine, but he must have imagined it. She also noted that she had to help with the preparations for the holiday, and therefore she needed to go. Khalid apologized, and then saw her turn sharply and run away. He decided that he must have done something wrong since she had changed so drastically. The maids were delighted to see Mr. Ben. He wished them good morning, and they literally beamed with his attention. They couldn't understand how he managed to be so perfect. Now it became clear why the Duke had kept him close for 10 years already. He knew that every bird throughout the empire was chirping. As they said, Ben Theresia knows absolutely everything. But Ben himself did not understand what to do with the master. He turned to His Highness and asked if he was sure that he wanted to wear this particular outfit. The gentleman was surprised and said that he did not see anything strange in his clothes. Ben replied that he didn't condemn him at all, but he would take into account that relations with the temple were already strained, and he was also planning to come in black to a holiday where it was customary to be in white. It looked too childish, and he wanted to suggest that the Duke change his clothes. Ben asked if the gentleman could trust him with his wardrobe so that he could pick out something suitable. Then Devon gave him a look that made Ben feel uneasy. He immediately changed his mind. He definitely didn't need this. As they were leaving, they came across Judy and Denny, and one of them asked if their father was leaving yet. The Duke thought Judy had gotten into another fight with someone, but he said he was just racing. However, the father doubted how it was possible to get injured while running, but he only asked his son not to do anything in his absence. Then Denny remarked that his father shouldn't worry. He would look after Judy. He also said that he wanted to buy some things at the same time, so they should tell him what exactly they needed. Denny asked his father to buy him a book about Archpriest Crisper, which would only be sold at the festival. When it was Judy's turn, he was very happy. He said that he wanted a little sister, and after these words, both the Duke, his assistant, and his brother were in complete shock. They asked him again what exactly he meant by his little sister. Judy explained that Hans and Sebastian had a younger sister, but he didn't. The Duke asked how much longer they could fool around, and Judy got a little angry. He said that he understood everything and demonstratively turned around and left. Judy noted that he knew his father wouldn't listen to him anyway. He also added that it was clear to him that his father only loved Danny. Then the Duke came up to him and said that Judy himself understood that this was not it. If he wants a girlfriend, he can find a maid his age, but he will not have a sister. The boy didn't understand why this was so, and the Duke tried to explain that it was because they didn't have a mother. Judy still didn't understand, and the Duke didn't know how to explain it to him, feeling awkward. Then he asked if any of them understood why there could be no talk of a little sister. Denny said it wasn't entirely impossible. The Duke was in complete shock, but Judy was very happy. Denny pointed out that it was possible to adopt someone. As they rode in the carriage, Ben noticed that His Highness looked thoughtful. He added that there was no need for that. Judy was always making things up. Then the Duke admitted that at first he also thought Judy was joking, but still decided to take his words into account. He tries to buy his children everything, to somehow compensate for the lack of maternal love. But it seems his generosity has a downside. They are bored with material things. They lack exiled love and simple attention. They no longer need toys and other things. But he cannot give them either a sister or the care that they so need. They grew up without knowing what family affection was, and perhaps if a good girl came into the house, the twins would finally understand what a real family meant. Adoption was a difficult decision, but his intuition rarely failed him in such matters. Therefore, he promised that he would definitely find a place where he could take the child. When they arrived, the Duke found it difficult to be at the event. Unexpectedly, Esther realized that getting to the Duke turned out to be much easier than she expected. However, she was unsure if she would be allowed to get close enough to make an assassination attempt. The women told Dina to bring a few more chairs from the warehouse. Jivitsa said that there are not enough places and they are all already taken. They couldn't understand why Dina had that expression on her face and thought that she shouldn't try to argue with them at all. Previously, she would have obeyed without a word, but now she replied that the priestess candidate had ordered her to do this. This made Esther extremely angry, and she yelled at her. Esther belonged to a noble family, but Esther had been orphaned from birth and grew up on the streets. According to her, Esther probably came from some kind of slums. Therefore, it was completely incomprehensible how she dared to argue with her when she herself did not even have parents. But Esther herself also dreamed of a family and did not want to be a pitiful orphan. She noticed that Duke Devon was gone and began to think that perhaps everything had failed. Esther was frightened, did not understand where he had gone, and began to frantically look around. The chance was missed, but suddenly she noticed him. She saw the Duke leaving and then grabbed the girl by the hand, starting to shout that she had become completely insolent. Esther demanded that she not leave her side and obey all her orders. Then a woman came up and said that she didn't understand what was going on, but there shouldn't be any quarrels during the festival. When she tried to explain something, Dina suddenly jumped up, and they tried to sit her down again. The woman asked if all this was really true, and added that she needed to agree immediately. Then, the girls demanded an explanation of where Esther was going. Esther replied that she had to bring more chairs, and now she did not know what to do because she would miss the Duke. She hoped that the Archduke had not yet left the temple. Most likely, he was still here. But he was nowhere to be seen, and in her sleeve lay the knife with which she was going to attack. She finally found him. He was almost gone. Esther hoped she could handle it, but now was not the time for doubt. She had to act. There was no way she could miss such a chance. She turned to His Highness, and the Duke immediately noticed her. She came closer and said that she had something to tell him, but her path was immediately blocked by knights. The girl got scared and quickly said that she just needed to talk to him. It would only take a minute. She fervently begged the Duke to listen to her, and he eventually agreed. He ordered the swords to be lowered. The Duke noted that, judging by her clothes, she was probably a candidate for the role of saint. He asked what she wanted, and she knew she needed to hit, but to do that she had to get closer. Esther came close enough to know that the moment had come. She pulled out a knife and rushed at the Duke. Devin grabbed her hand himself and said that at first he thought she was just weird, but it turned out she wanted to kill him, a rude girl. He asked if she really intended to kill him with this. The Duke demanded to know who had sent her and ordered an answer immediately. Her life drags on endlessly. A life full of suffering repeats itself again and again. And now she was here again. But her time had come. The Duke repeated the question. Who sent her? She had to answer. Otherwise, death awaited her. The girl was unexpectedly happy to hear about her execution. Her hour had come. All the torment was finally about to end. Esther grabbed his hand, and Duke Devin had no idea what was happening. She hit the knife, but the Duke threw her away. He noted to himself that the girl was not only strange, but also stupid. He realized that she had come here not for his life, but for hers. She had to answer whether the temple ordered her to do so. He also asked what she had been promised in return for such recklessness. Then he thought that Esther would simply remain silent until he killed her. The Duke ordered that she be returned to the temple. But Esther immediately jumped up and began to beg him not to do it. She asked him not to leave. She said that she didn't want to go back. She didn't want to return to the temple. She begged for help, begged him to help her die. Esther didn't want to resist. She wasn't going to say anything. She just asked to be killed. She really wanted to die. She believed that death was better than returning to the temple. Then Duke Devin ordered her to be released. He looked at her and asked how old she was. Esther replied that she was now 12. He was surprised when he heard this and touched her forehead. The Duke noted that she really did not want to return to the temple. So he said that in that case, he would invite her to become his daughter. Esther was shocked when she heard this and asked again. She smiled and asked if he really wanted to take her in. The Duke noted that he was looking for a girl to adopt, and he liked her. Esther said that she was, after all, a commoner of humble origin. She added that a father like him would not want such a daughter. But the Duke said he saw nothing wrong with that. If she becomes his daughter, she will be a noble lady. Esther couldn't believe it when she heard that she could become a noble lady. But she knew that there was no point in building castles in the air, because everything always ended badly. First, you need to get out of the shelter. So she agreed to let him adopt her. The Duke thought that this little girl didn't even know how to use a knife, and she already didn't want to live. She just came and asked to kill her, a 12-year-old girl. There was such sincerity in her eyes, and that was why he decided to adopt her. He also remembered that he had completely forgotten to ask the most important thing, her name. Her name had never interested anyone before. So she named herself Dina. Then the Duke said she had made the right choice, and later he would send someone to the temple to complete the adoption process. All she has to do is just wait. He smiled maliciously, and Esther even felt scared. The Duke apologized if he had frightened her and said that he loved it when a girl smiled at him. Esther replied that there was nothing wrong with that. It was just that no one had ever looked at her with such kindness. When he heard this, he remembered how the knights had previously said that they did not want to see his smile again. Esther asked when she could leave the temple, and the Duke replied that as soon as the adoption process was completed, she would be notified and could go to her new home. It usually takes about 5 days, and after 5 days, she will finally leave the temple and gain freedom. Only then will Esther no longer be burdened by anything, and will she be able to die. The gentleman asked Duke Theresia again whether he really intended to take the candidate for sainthood. The Duke confirmed that this is indeed the case. He intends to adopt her. The gentleman objected, saying that candidates for sainthood were the temple's most valuable resource, and therefore such a thing was absolutely out of the question. However, the decision may change depending on who exactly he wants to take under guardianship. Perhaps they can hand over a lower-ranking girl. They thought the Duke had already chosen someone, and then he named Dina. The men heard this name for the first time and began to search for information about her in archival records. Then they realized that he was talking about an orphan found on the street, and they asked again if the Duke was sure that this was the girl he wanted. After all, almost no holy energy was detected in her. One could say there was none at all. If he wished, they could present a more suitable candidate. However, the Duke coldly remarked that they seemed to be questioning his choice, and for that he usually takes away their tongues. Then the gentleman said that they agreed to give the girl away, if only to at least slightly reduce the possible damage from the Duke's actions. He added that, despite everything, he asks for a small donation to be accepted for the benefit of the temple. The men were completely shocked when they saw how much money they would receive. It was 1,000,000 errands. The temple hadn't had that kind of money for a long time. Ben noted that in this case, they are counting on the support of the temple and hope for mutual understanding. The men quickly assured that, of course, they would be very happy to help. They expressed their deep gratitude, promising to use the donation for good, and said that the Duke had indeed been of great help to the temple. Ben expected things to be much more complicated. Meanwhile, the men began to ponder who would get the money, the temple or... One of them said that only they knew about the money, and therefore it would be quite possible to simply divide half of the sum between themselves. To pay that kind of money for a third-rate candidate who has no chance of becoming a saint is like throwing it away. The wound on Esther's neck had already healed, and it happened quite quickly. She decided that she could now go outside. Previously, due to unstable divine energy, she was not allowed to leave the temple grounds. It was strange to just up and leave, and that was it. And yet, Esther didn't expect anything. The nobility is often frivolous. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow everything will return to normal, as if nothing had happened, even if she ends up in the Duke's house. He already has 2 sons. All nobles are the same. Prejudice, envy, meanness. They certainly won't become a family for her. Therefore, you always need to be prepared. Although, in essence, this is no longer important. Or maybe you just have to die, and that's it. Perhaps all she had to do was wait for that moment. For now, she could be patient. The girl was told more than once that she must obey every order of the Duke without question, without asking questions or expressing dissatisfaction. She was warned. She should not hope to return back. She would have to forget about the temple forever, as if her life before it no longer existed. When the girl timidly asked what would happen if the gentleman suddenly abandoned her, she was dryly told that then it would only be her personal difficulties. The temple no longer has anything to do with her, and now she must find a way to survive as best she can. No one else will come to her aid. All this seemed terrible. especially because she had once truly considered the temple her warm and familiar home and believed in its care. On the way, the girl unexpectedly ran into Raphael, who stared at her in surprise, not immediately recognizing the changed Dina. Raphael couldn't understand where she was going so early, because in their house it was not customary to go out without special need. The woman noticed that Mrs. Raphael herself had also been up early in the morning, which was unusual even for such a responsible person. Raphael replied that she was heading to prayer and politely asked where she and the girl were going, since it was too early for a walk. The woman calmly explained that from now on, Dina would live in Duke Terezia's house, as if it were a completely natural decision. Hearing this, Raphael was shocked to the core, and the woman added that the Duke had not only sheltered Dina, but had officially adopted her. Raphael was simply completely perplexed and asked again if she had made a mistake, because what she heard from him was so unexpected and shocking. She immediately asked if she would be allowed to say goodbye to Dina, because the girls were very close friends and the bond between them was strong. The woman replied that, of course, they shouldn't rush, and they could very well afford to say goodbye to Dina. No one would be against such a step. Raphael couldn't resist asking another question. Was Dina really going to live with the Duke? And was he her real father, or was it just a rumor? Dina immediately replied that this was not the case, after which Raphael curiously asked why the Duke would need an orphan who did not possess high divine energy. She didn't understand why the Duke had decided to adopt her, because Dina's level of divine energy was quite low, and it seemed strange and illogical. At that moment, Raphael took off her mask of hypocrisy, openly revealing her true attitude and hidden motives that had not been visible before. She then quickly apologized for her words, saying that she had not meant to offend Dina and that it had been said thoughtlessly in the heat of the moment. Raphael admitted that she was simply very sad that Dina was leaving and that she would miss their communication and friendship. Despite everything, she smiled and noted that they had always been very close and that this connection would not disappear even after separation. In the end, Raphael turned out to be unpleasant with her duplicity, because her words about intimacy and sadness sounded false and only caused irritation. She was the cause of all the torment that had haunted her through many previous lives. All the pain and suffering emanated from her, like a dark shadow of the past. Raphael's feigned kindness. She felt that this mask of deceit would sooner or later be shattered, and she intended to avenge all the wrongs. Despite this, Dina noted that she felt not only anger, but also pity for Raphael. Deep down, she sincerely wished her all the best, even if those feelings were mixed. As a parting gift, Dina chose a prayer for Raphael to become the next saint, but she secretly hoped that, even after her death, this would never happen under any circumstances. Dina wished that the causes of her own pain would return to Raphael in the form of the same endless and unbearable suffering that she herself had experienced. However, she never spoke of this out loud. To those around her, she simply stated that she wanted Raphael to live a holy life, filled with joy, smiles, and bright days. Secretly, Dina hoped that in the future, Raphael would suffer so many misfortunes that even the shadow of a smile on her lips would become impossible and cruelly forbidden. This was her real thought. The words were one thing, but in her heart they were completely different, hidden deep, like a dark secret. Dina simply pulled herself together and calmly said thank you to Raphael, hiding all the complexity of her feelings behind this calm. She noted to herself that she still sincerely hoped that everything would work out well in Raphael's life, despite all the hardships and contradictions within. She couldn't understand what exactly happened at that moment, and why Dina always behaved so unpredictably and strangely in such situations. Today, Dina seemed especially special, as if she was saying something important with her quiet speech, and her gaze seemed very mysterious and deep. It seemed as if she already knew all the secrets that no one could hide from her, and this created a special atmosphere of mystery and confidence around her. Despite this, Dina remained just as brazen and daring, but Raphael decided to just accept it and not try to change her. She understood that their paths would not cross again, and this feeling of farewell filled her with a slight sadness, but also peace at the same time. The Duke's wife was named Irene, and everyone admired her beauty. She was a true beauty, whose face and gait attracted everyone's attention. When Irene saw her husband, she smiled sincerely, her eyes shining with warmth and tenderness, expressing love and joy. The husband said it was a chilly night, and he didn't understand why she was staying there. But the wife replied that she was just admiring the stars. The night sky was amazing. She added to Devon, just in case, that they would soon have a daughter. This news filled the house with bright hope and joyful anticipation. The woman asked Dina if she could see the path and noted that, at the end of it, someone was waiting, as if holding their breath and hoping to meet. After this, she was told to leave, because the temple no longer had anything to do with her, and now she had to go her own way. As soon as the door closed behind her, she found herself outside the temple, as if she had come out of another world in which everything was different and a little scary. She had never been able to escape her sad fate before, which seemed to follow her everywhere, not giving her a moment's peace. She often faced neglect and betrayal, feeling abandoned and alone in this cruel world where no one held her hand. Every time she tried to commit suicide to end the pain and suffering, it was as if everything was repeating itself again, without change or relief. But now the situation was different. This time everything would go differently, because a new stage was beginning in her life, and changes became inevitable. She was not locked in prison because she managed to escape in time, and now she was free, although new trials lay ahead. No one threw her into prison. She had already taken an important step that changed the course of events and entailed other consequences. She was met by Ben, who immediately noticed that everyone was waiting for my lady to appear and was happy to help at this important moment. The girl was amazed to see the luxurious carriage, and Ben said that he was the Duke's personal assistant, and it was a great honor for him to serve my lady. She could not believe how they were treating her now, and, following etiquette, she greeted the gentleman with respect and caution. The meeting was mutual. The girl also experienced joy from this acquaintance and bowed in response, showing her respect. Ben noted that now my lady should bow to him, since he represents the Tarisha family and its status. The girl replied that she simply bowed, as she was still uncomfortable immediately accepting the new title and the rank of milady. Ben reminded her that she was now a member of the Tarisha family, and that meant much more than just words or formalities. He explained that there was only one Archduke in the empire, her father, and she was his only daughter, which determined her high status. Her behavior and manners now reflect the position and importance of the family she now represents and belongs to. The girl was shocked to learn that her behavior was affecting the entire family. Ben explained that he understood that she still had to get used to all the rules and customs of the house. Gradually, she would get used to the new order and master everything on her own. Deep down, the girl understood that this was no simple test, but part of her new world. Now she became part of the Archduke's family and had to behave with dignity, follow the rules, and live up to her new status, even though it seemed unusual. The Duke himself was in the carriage, and the girl felt grateful that it was he who had come for her and given her a chance for a new life and safety. The Duke firmly stated that he always kept his promises, and this sounded like confidence, not empty words or bragging. This statement did not sound like boasting, but rather like genuine determination and a serious attitude towards his duties. It is better that he be so direct than to hide his real intentions behind a smile and betrayal, as often happens in high circles. The girl sat far from the Duke, feeling fear and uncertainty. She was not used to being next to such an influential man. She even moved further away, trying to keep her distance, because she was out of her element and did not understand how to behave correctly. Perhaps it was simply the first bad impression of the Duke, caused by fear and uncertainty in a new environment. The Duke could hardly have behaved differently. His manner seemed reserved and somewhat cold, which was explained by his role and character. He asked if all the things in the carriage belonged to her, to which the girl answered in the affirmative, not hiding that this was all she had at the moment. The Duke noted that she still had many necessary things to buy, but the girl immediately objected that she did not need anything, fearing unnecessary expenses and changes. She insisted that everything was fine with her, and that the things she already had were enough for her, and that she didn't need anything else. But someone thought that there was no point in buying her anything. Her fate was sad anyway, and it would all end soon. The Duke felt awkward, because it would have been so much easier if she had simply said what she wanted, like Judy did. He himself didn't understand what she really wanted, but he wanted to give her something special, a name that would be important. His wife's words came to mind, that they would soon have a girl, and she dreamed of giving her a name that would shine like the stars in the sky. She wanted this name to contain all the boundless love she already felt for her future daughter. The name chosen for the girl was Esther, which was meant to become a symbol of new life and hope. At first, the girl did not understand why she was given the name Esther, but the Duke explained that it meant the beginning of her new story. Her name was now Esther, a name that translated as bright as a star, filled with light and promise. The girl noticed that all her life she had lived in darkness, as if in a shadow, where it was impossible to shine. She had never been allowed to shine, and that was why the name seemed alien and unsuitable to her. She tried to object that it was not for her, but she was stopped, saying that her light was yet to come and it would be special. The Duke assured her that one day she would shine so brightly that she would stand out among all the Lady Teresians in the vault. She would be special and unique. She will be the one who will be able to freely choose her own destiny, not submitting to the decisions of others, but deciding everything on her own, step by step moving towards her dream. The girl wondered if she could accept this name, so beautiful and filled with meaning, which had now become a part of her and her destiny, a new chapter in her life. She didn't understand why she needed this name from a man who would soon pass away, but she felt that it wasn't just a random word. It had a special meaning. The name became her real one, so beautiful and important, even if only for a short time. But at that moment, she wanted to be Esther and feel this power inside herself. She burst into tears, full of gratitude to the Duke for giving her this name, which would now accompany her on a new path, in a new life. Before, she looked wary and tense, but now her face relaxed and she dozed off carefree, as if she had returned to childhood. At that moment, she really did look like a little girl, carefree, calm, and vulnerable, as she should be at her age. It was unbearable for the Duke to see despair in the eyes unless it happened on the battlefield, because he was used to fighting, but not to such defenselessness. He understood that the little girl had probably been through a lot and seen more than the soul of a child of her age could bear. Her clothes were very tattered and worn, which spoke of the difficulties and long journey she had to overcome to this point. If you looked closely, you could see that her clothes were very dirty and worn out, as if she had not changed or washed them for a long time. He immediately realized that this whole trouble happened because of the temple priests, whose behavior only complicated the situation. He turned the carriage towards the dress shop, announcing that they urgently needed to choose clothes for the girl. This surprised one of them, who asked if it was really so important to go there right now, without delay. The Duke replied that they were heading straight to Odar Street, where everything they needed could be found without delay. Now the girl had a real family, and the boy asked who this Duke was who had become her new patron. The girl herself could not yet say who he was, but she understood that this man was very different from those she had met before. He didn't just say nice words, but always kept his promises, which was a real relief for her. The boy was sure that the Duke would now keep a close eye on her, and he need not worry about her fate. The girl was surprised when she heard that she was being watched constantly, and the boy noted that it was true. The Duke always kept an eye on her. She just couldn't understand who this person really was and why he treated her like that. At that moment, she was told to open her eyes and wake up, as if returning to reality after a long sleep. The girl apologized for falling asleep, but the gentleman reassured her, saying that there was nothing to worry about. He noticed that they had important business to attend to and that they needed to visit a famous place that was very popular among the locals. It was Lily Odar Street, where the Christina Boutique was located, a very prestigious place with fashionable clothes and unusual outfits. The gentleman noted that she needed to diversify her wardrobe to look more modern and appropriate to their new circumstances. The girl was amazed when she saw how big and luxurious this boutique was, with many display windows and beautiful mannequins. The lady, having met them, asked why he had not informed them of his visit in advance, since then they would have prepared something especially for them. The gentleman admitted that it was his mistake, asked for forgiveness, but explained that the young lady urgently needed new clothes, and there was no time to wait. The woman was surprised to see the girl, but this surprise quickly gave way to interest. The young lady looked very unusual and touching. Esther felt uneasy, afraid that they would tell her she was too dirty or untidy, and refused to help her choose clothes. But Christina confidently said that she would be happy to pick out several new dresses for this young lady so that she would be comfortable and beautiful. She asked the young lady's name, and the girl replied that her name was Dinah. But the Duke immediately corrected her, saying that her name was now Esther. After this, Christina said that they could move on, because they needed to pick out suitable dresses for the girl for different occasions. She noted that the girl could still leaf through the catalog. Here were everyday dresses, there were ones for weekends, and here were ones from the latest fashion collection. The girl felt a little awkward, because she didn't understand anything about fashion, and didn't know where to start in this world of outfits. Esther then asked if it was okay for her to sit on such an expensive and elegant sofa without seeming impolite or breaking the rules. Christina smiled and replied that everything was fine. She could sit there, and that this was no reason to worry or be embarrassed. The girl realized that she was treated kindly and calmly here. It didn't feel like a strict temple or a place where you couldn't relax. In the past, they had been punished even for sitting on tables, and she remembered the fear and severity from those times. So now Esther was very grateful to Christina for the care and kindness she showed towards her. Everything here was different, and the girl didn't even expect that she could be accepted and supported like this, as if she were part of something new and important. Christina, turning to Esther, wondered where the Duke could have found such a girl, since she was clearly not from their usual circle. The girl held the catalog in her hands, but did not open it. She decided to first show that she was ready to listen and trust a professional. Christina began to talk about which soft and gentle colors would perfectly suit Esther's skin tone to highlight her natural beauty. Everything around looked truly luxurious, but Christina decided that the girl simply wasn't interested in it and didn't want to try on such beauty. Esther explained that the reason was completely different. She simply did not need to wear these things, although she had already been provided with many dresses, and Christina was stunned. All of this was from the most prestigious collections, so the girl decided to study the catalog more closely to understand what exactly would suit her and what she would like. All the designs Esther chose were understated and modest, without unnecessary details, reflecting her simple yet elegant taste. At that moment, it seemed that Christina had grasped her style and said that she knew what styles she might like and would suit her perfectly. With such a sweet, gentle face, in her opinion, the girl could afford absolutely any style and look great in them. Christina took real pleasure in helping to dress elegant ladies, and that is why she was happy to help Esther choose outfits. She was sure that real magic would begin now, to transform the girl, to make her even more beautiful, although Esther was in slight shock from what was happening. The girl seemed to want to get away from this whole world, but now, in this atmosphere, she felt very comfortable and good, so she decided to stay a little longer. Despite wanting to leave everything and everyone, she felt a calm and warmth inside that made her want to stay and experience this moment. A lot of time passed, and the jet ski began to wonder why everything always took so long, as if it had become a habit for him that was hard to break. After a while, a girl came out of the room towards them. Her appearance was unexpected and immediately attracted all eyes around, like a bright spark in the darkness. The gentleman was shocked to the depths of his soul when he saw her for the first time. His emotions were mixed. He could not believe his eyes and froze in place. The girl asked, it seemed to herself, if she looked strange, as if she realized that her appearance might cause surprise or questions. It was then that the gentleman suddenly recognized her as his wife, and this moment became a turning point when doubts disappeared, giving way to firm confidence. They were very similar to each other, like 2 drops of water. The girl was like a living copy of Irene, like a reflection in the mirror of the past. The gentleman thought that if they had a daughter, she would look exactly like this. And in this thought, he saw an ideal that seemed to have been formed from memories. Esther noted that this dress brought her so much joy after just one fitting. Happiness, like a flash of light, filled her heart. The dress suited her face and figure perfectly, and the gentleman curiously imagined how the girl would look in other outfits, hoping that they would find something else. But the girl said that she didn't need a lot of clothes. She only wanted this dress, as if it were the only and most important thing for her. The gentleman insisted that Esther try on a few more dresses, as he had enough time and could wait calmly without rushing into making a choice. Christina was absolutely delighted with what was happening, because the girl looked amazing in every outfit, as if she was made for these dresses. Everything she wore fit perfectly, highlighting her natural beauty, as if she were the true pearl of the day. This little girl was truly very sweet and charming, which could not help but please everyone around her. The gentleman turned to Ben and said that all the dresses that Esther tried on must be bought without exception. Ben promised to carry out the order, but was internally shocked by such a decision, because the cost was considerable. After several hours of trying on dresses, they settled on 7 that suited Esther best and looked the most elegant. The Duke assured that if the girl wanted more outfits, she should not be shy and just ask him. He would definitely help. However, Esther replied that these dresses were quite enough for her and expressed her sincere gratitude for such care. Christina approached the Duke with a question about the fate of the clothes the girl had arrived in, wondering how he would dispose of these things. The gentleman declared that the girl was no longer needed and could be thrown away, as if she were a useless object that was no longer worth keeping around. The girl understood perfectly well that at any moment someone could betray her, stick a knife in her back, and then she would be abandoned without regret. But now a special moment is coming, as if magic is beginning, changing everything around, and she feels it with her whole heart. Everything around her resembles a fairy tale, as if she had entered another world where the impossible becomes real and magical. If this is really a dream, then the girl does not want to wake up. She wants to stay in this beautiful and amazing world. After some time, they arrived at the place where she would now live, and she was simply stunned by what she saw. The Duke's sons were already living here, and all the maids and servants immediately greeted the master, showing respect and joy. The butler came out from behind the scenes to greet the master, showing his devotion and willingness to serve him. The Duke asked where the boys were now, and the butler said that they were upstairs in their rooms or playing. The girl was confused and didn't know how to behave. She didn't expect to see so many people and feel such attention. The master ordered his sons to be called, but they quickly ran to him without waiting for an invitation, as if they sensed his return. The boys ran up and asked in surprise when their father had managed to return, not expecting him to appear at that moment. They also noticed a girl next to her father and asked who this strange little girl was who appeared with him. Even the girl was asked who she was, because no one really knew her story or name, and everyone was puzzled by her appearance in the house. Denny was quick to point out that people should be more careful with their words and not just call her a little girl, since she was part of the family now. But people couldn't figure out how to properly address the girl, because her name was unknown to them, and this only added to the confusion. These two were twins, the sons of a duke, and everyone knew that they were brothers, but the girl remained a mystery to everyone. The gentleman ordered the two to come down and introduce themselves properly, without unnecessary conversations or doubts. They had to greet their new sister, and Judy, surprised, asked if she was really their relative now. Judy quickly ran downstairs, because this girl was a stranger to him, and he was not particularly happy about her appearance next to them. However, as he got closer, he noticed that she was significantly younger than him, which softened his attitude a little. He said it was really cool and wondered when they had such a little sister. Denny, watching his brother, sternly told him to stop talking nonsense and to be more serious. He should have immediately realized that this girl was his former half-sister, whom fate had now brought together with him again in the same house. The father noted that she would be living with him, so it was important that they get to know each other and establish a relationship as soon as possible. Judy was delighted with the arrival of the new girl and began to inquire about her name and where she came from to their house. The girl replied that her name was Esther and that she had come from the temple where she had previously lived and spent a lot of time. Judy asked again if she was joking and clarified whether her dad had really picked her up there, in that very temple. Judy's father sternly told her that if he continued to behave like this, he would call the teacher to explain how to behave. People around said that it was not worth letting it come to this, and that everything was clear, but now it was time to end the conversation, since Judy needed to leave. However, the father asked Judy to stop, since the boy did not yet understand the seriousness of what was happening and the essence of the matter. The father emphasized that he had already been told that this girl was now his sister, and he was obliged to show her the house and help her settle in. Judy didn't understand why he should do it, and said that it would be better to let Denny do it, since he spent most of his time at home anyway. But Denny suddenly went somewhere, and her father noticed that this meant that Judy seemed to be refusing to fulfill her father's request. The guy realized that there was no way to avoid this, and he simply fell silent, accepting the inevitability of what had happened. They explained to him that his father lived on the second floor, and that the third and fourth floors were guest rooms for visitors and family guests. Her and Denny's rooms were on the fourth floor, so she was offered the option of a bedroom on the third floor, where there was more privacy and space. The third floor was spacious and bright. Large windows let in plenty of daylight, and the air seemed especially fresh and pleasant to live in. Judy was determined to go and sort things out with Sebastian because he didn't understand why his dad had assigned him such an unpleasant and tedious task. The girl's name was Coster. The name sounded unusual, but somehow it was immediately remembered and aroused Judy's interest and even slight wariness. Despite everything, for some reason Coster reminded him very much of his mother. Not in appearance, but in some of her behavior and manners, which were surprisingly similar. Suddenly he noticed that the girl stopped, as if she were thinking, and asked what exactly had happened, as if something had really touched her at that moment. He saw her looking at one of the rooms, and she said it was very beautiful, although there was a doubt in her voice, as if she liked this room, but not entirely. He decided to clarify whether Lena really wanted this particular room, because her words were not entirely clear, and he wanted to understand her true desire. The girl asked if she could keep this particular room. If not, she was willing to choose another one, because she wanted to live in a comfortable and cozy place. The guy gave his permission, saying he was just planning to escape through the room. He didn't object, but he wanted to leave quickly and without further ado. The boy asked the girl to take the room for herself. She asked again if this could really be done without any doubt. He replied that it was possible, but at the same time demanded a promise to go with him to Sebastian, without options or discussions. The girl asked who this Sebastian was. The boy explained that he was just a weird guy, nothing more than a jerk. He took Esther's little finger in his hand and asked again if she would promise to fulfill his condition and go with him. Remains also said that she promised, and then the girl gave her finger as a sign of agreement and seriousness of intentions. The butler had already found Milady and informed her that His Highness wished to meet with her as soon as possible without delay. He asked if the girl had chosen peace for herself, to which she confirmed, adding that she was already heading there. The table was set so that it was bursting with treats. Everything looked very appetizing and promised a pleasant evening. It seemed the Duke, who had a sweet tooth, noticed something was wrong with the girl. I asked again to find out what exactly had alerted him. He wondered if the girl might not like sweets, but she insisted everything was fine and that none of the treats bothered her. She was calm and didn't want to cause any trouble. They said she preferred cookies, but he reminded her of a more important matter: the adoption papers that were waiting to be signed and were desperately needed to complete the process. All that was left to do was sign the papers, after which the process would officially be complete, and she would become a full-fledged part of the new family, which was of great importance to everyone. These documents will become official confirmation that the girl now bears the name Esther and is legally part of the Theresia family, which will change her life forever. All it took was a simple signature, but it left her with the impression that what was happening was somehow unreal and alien. When she signed the documents, the gentleman congratulated her. She was now officially his daughter. She was also grateful. He expected joy, but for some reason the girl looked sad and thoughtful. She quickly said that she could leave now, as if she wanted to leave as soon as possible. But the gentleman suddenly stopped her and handed her a cookie. He gently asked her to try it, as if he wanted to support her and lift her spirits a little at that moment. He insisted that she bite at least a little, but the girl was scared. She did not understand how he had appeared so unexpectedly nearby. However, she still decided to try these cookies, not knowing what awaited her. It turned out that the cookies were very tasty, and the girl smiled heartily for the first time. It was a real pleasure, and the Duke, seeing her smile, also could not hide his joy. He informed her that she could now eat as much as she wanted and not be afraid to ask for more. She would no longer need food or care, because she was now part of the family and deserved to be happy. Every day will be filled with warmth and joy for her, because she has become the Duke's daughter. This new position has changed her entire life, opening doors that were previously closed to her. It all happened precisely because the Duke accepted her as his own daughter, providing her with the protection and attention that she had not experienced for so long in her life. That evening, the Turkish man informed the gentleman that Esther was already fast asleep, and nothing was bothering her. This was a sign that the girl felt safe and at peace. The gentleman understood the importance of this moment and immediately called his sons to discuss plans and further actions to protect and support Esther. He said that a family meeting would now begin where important issues would be discussed, but everything would only begin after the girl woke up and felt completely safe. When Esther woke up, the street outside was bathed in a bright light she hadn't seen in a long time. This morning gave her a feeling of something new and pure. She slept well, despite sleeping on the floor. Such a deep and restful awakening was rare for her, and she felt her body fill with strength. She couldn't remember the last time the morning had been so warm and bright, because before, every day of hers began with darkness and oppression in the dungeons. The girl had not yet gotten used to such peace and light when her personal maid came to her and gently asked how she had slept in her new home. This maid is Dorothy, who became more than just a servant for Esther, but a real support and helper in a world that was unfamiliar to her. The girl replied that she felt comfortable and calm. She asked how Dorothy had slept, to which the maid quietly remarked that the lady had promised to be there and not worry. The girl noted that she had simply asked a question, but he wasn't used to that, and the maid was confident her mistress would quickly get the hang of it. It was already approaching breakfast time, and everything was being prepared. Of course, the girl understood that she needed to get ready quickly, and they promised to help her so that everything went smoothly and without unnecessary hassle, because the beginning of the day was very important. The table was still set, neatly and beautifully laid, with elegant dishes and fresh dishes that awaited their guests, creating an atmosphere of comfort and order. The girl felt that there was no special place for her here, as if she were superfluous, not fitting into the overall picture, and this feeling intensified her confusion and uncertainty. Now she realized that there was no point in even hoping for family warmth with the master, because she was not here to play at being a family, but to fulfill her role, which was far from intimacy. Brother Denny approached her, wondering why she was standing in the middle of the aisle, and gently told her to take a seat at the table so that she wouldn't feel like an outsider among everyone. He explained that her place had not yet been set because he had not yet been assigned one, so at the moment there was no separate table setting for her. He advised against standing, and to sit down so as not to stand out, and not to create inconvenience for oneself or others, emphasizing the importance of respecting order in the home. Denny noticed that Judy, his sister, had slept late again and had not yet gotten up, which was usual for her in the mornings and caused slight bewilderment among those present. He checked to see if the girl's name was Esther, trying to remember her name and welcome her into the house as a guest should, so that she would feel more confident. Denny asked the butler to pour water for my lady, considering it an important part of the morning ritual to show care and attention to the guest. He explained that it's beneficial to drink a glass of water in the morning because it helps the stomach function better, and noted that he always starts his day this way, following simple health rules. The girl remarked that she hadn't known such things before, and the guy added that she too should pay attention to a few useful habits that would help her in life. The girl realized that this was hardly a sign that he liked her. She didn't even expect that he would ever talk to her personally and pay attention to her. From that moment on, Esther became a younger sister to them, and her past ceased to matter. Now all that mattered was that they were together, and no distance or insult could separate them. These are exactly the words that the father spoke when he opened the meeting to set clear rules for everyone and explain how they should now treat Esther. The father especially emphasized that this rule applied to Judy, who no longer had the right to be rude or offend Esther, as had happened at their first meeting. Judy didn't understand why someone was speaking for him again, but his father explained that it was because of the constant troubles he was getting into with his behavior, and he needed to listen carefully to the instructions. The father explained that he took Esther in not because of someone's whims or desires, but because in the future she needed to be protected and accepted as an equal part of the family, like a natural daughter. Now they all need to try to get along with her, build good relationships, and create an atmosphere of trust and care around Esther, like in a real family. Denny thought it was strange that his father was paying so much attention to someone he didn't know before, and why he was so concerned about her in particular. Esther's name became both interesting and mysterious to everyone. They wanted to understand who she was, where she came from, and why Duke Theresia chose her to adopt her. Esther noticed that their water tasted delicious and smiled for a moment, sensing something unusual in this simple drink. It was a small discovery for her. Denny was surprised by her words about water. He didn't expect that she would notice such a small detail, as if the water here really had some special property, unlike the usual one. She agreed with Denny, because the temple had never given them such pure and pleasant water that they could drink without any doubts or doubts about its quality. At that moment, the Duke appeared and remarked that the day was going well, greeting them with a slight smile, as if encouraging a good start to the morning for everyone present. Esther addressed him by his title again, although in reality no one could force her to do so. But the Duke deep down hoped that progress would come quickly and without delay. Now all he could do was wait for her to decide to open up, and since this was his first breakfast with Esther, the Duke asked the cooks to prepare the dishes especially carefully. He really hoped that Esther would like everything, because it was important to him that she felt comfortable and enjoyed the food prepared especially for her. A place at the table had already been prepared for her, and the upcoming breakfast seemed like a real miracle, something unusual and special, created just for her. Esther didn't know how to use cutlery properly and was afraid that she might be ridiculed for her ignorance, because it all seemed completely alien and new to her. She noticed her brother Denny suddenly grab the utensils, unsure why. The action struck her as unexpected and a little odd. Gradually, she began to think that perhaps he wanted to show her how to hold these devices properly, as if he wanted to help her figure them out. She realized that Denny probably wanted her to repeat after him because he noticed that she was having a hard time doing it. He seemed to really understand her well. He was very observant and attentive to her needs. The Duke, watching them, was now sure that he definitely didn't have to worry about Denny. She would be fine with a brother like that. Earlier, the butler entered the girl's room and announced that Mr. Judy had given her something important, causing her surprise. The girl asked again, and the butler explained that he had asked to remind her of the promise he had made yesterday and wanted to make sure that she had not forgotten. The butler also noted that Esther herself would soon understand everything and invited her to meet Judy in the garden at exactly 2:30. The girl was hesitant at first, but she realized that everything was serious and asked him to tell her that she would definitely come and that Judy could wait for her in the garden. The maid smiled, realizing the lady had already made friends and felt comfortable in their company. It was a significant moment for a girl who rarely found close companions. She thought the lady was undoubtedly overjoyed at the prospect of meeting Judy's brother. This was a special occasion for her, as meetings with her family were rare. The girl appeared happy on the outside, but in reality she admitted that it was the first time she had made an appointment and felt a little nervous about the upcoming event. The maid suggested not to waste precious time and start preparing for the trip, showing concern and a desire to accompany the girl on a walk to support her. The girl expected to see a dense and dark garden, but instead it turned out to be a spacious, bright place, a real decoration of the estate, which everyone here was very proud of. In addition, the maid prepared a small snack so that they could have a picnic and enjoy the meal outdoors while they waited. The master was due soon, and it was best to wait together. No one had noticed her before in the temple, so the promise of a meeting seemed truly important and sacred. The girl was really looking forward to Mr. Judy and tried to believe that he would definitely appear very soon, giving herself the strength to endure the wait. They had been sitting there for a long time, and the maid herself began to wonder where Master Judy could be, because he was still nowhere to be seen or heard. It was completely unclear where he could have gone and whether he had forgotten about his promise, because time passed, and he still did not appear nearby. People can be unpredictable at times, and he seemed to have forgotten what he'd promised to do, despite all the agreements they'd made. His behavior became a mystery to everyone. The maid was at a loss as to what to do next. Perhaps it would be better to take the lady home until the situation became clearer and safer. Esther calmly noted that there was nothing to worry about in the delay and suggested they wait a little longer, since they were in no hurry anyway and could spend time together. She explained that the people were mentioned because he apparently had some important business to attend to, which was likely why he was delayed, even though he had promised to show up on time. Esther expressed a desire to be a little patient, since this was their first walk, and she wanted everything to go as well and pleasantly as possible. The maid was amazed. The lady turned out to be so reasonable and balanced that it was difficult for her to understand where she got so much calm and prudence at such an age. Suddenly, a young man approached them, who considered Judy a fool and did not understand why he had brought him here at such a moment, clearly expressing his dissatisfaction with the situation. Judy explained that he had a little sister, but the guy called it nonsense, thinking that he was actually just jealous and making up problems for himself. The young man approached the girl and began asking who she was and whether they had met before, trying to understand what her real role was in their circle. He asked if she really was that same little sister of Judy, not fully believing the truth of what he heard from his brother. The girl was afraid to answer questions. She was overcome with anxiety, and she tried to find the words to explain her situation, but fear prevented her from speaking freely. The guy grabbed her hand and said that Judy was already in such despair that he decided to send some random girl to him in order to somehow get out of the situation. He was so depressed and lost that he said he had no other option left, not even something to hold on to. The guy seemed completely crazy because he admitted that he no longer knew what to do next and that he had no support in his life. The maid intervened and advised Mr. Sebastian to behave differently. Now the girl finally understood who this Sebastian really was. Sebastian asked Esther how much Judy had paid her, emphasizing that she should not be shy and should honestly tell the whole truth. He promised that if she confessed, he would double the amount, because for him, she was just a commoner, like furniture that could be rearranged in a temple. The maid warned that if Master Sebastian continued to speak to the lady in such a tone, she would immediately call His Highness to intervene. Sebastian was surprised to hear about the Highness and wondered if this girl really was Judy's sister, despite all his doubts about it. He thought it was a lie because the girl didn't look like Judy at all, and his gut feeling was telling him that something was wrong. Besides, he was puzzled as to where she had come from, since this skinny, cheap girl was in no way comparable to his real sister. He told the girl that if she thought the master would save her, she should believe him. He would not allow her to feel bad and would not give anyone an inch. Esther apologized when the maid told her that she just needed to sit down to rest a little and not disturb herself unnecessarily. The maid noted that one should not take Mr. Sebastian's words too seriously. Sometimes his words are harsh, but not with malicious intent. The girl replied that it was nothing to worry about, and he was right, but she just didn't want the aristocrats to touch someone like her, a beggar and adopted by a master. It was terrible that she couldn't say anything back. Suddenly, she heard a voice that surprised her and distracted her from her heavy thoughts. She saw a small dog barking loudly nearby, as if trying to get her attention and diffuse the situation. The maid explained that this was probably the first time the girl had seen the dog. His name was Smiley, and he belonged to Judy, the son of Duke Thuresia. Esther found the dog very cute. She stroked him carefully, and the little dog immediately showed friendliness towards her, happily wagging his tail. The maid asked if they were going to return home, since the day was almost over and it was time to leave. But the girl said she was in no hurry because the day had not yet completely passed, and Smiley remained nearby. She did not want to leave without him. She wasn't expecting Judy's brother anymore. She just wanted to sit in the sun for a while, enjoying the rare moments of peace and warmth that evening. Judy felt relieved when it was finally over, although the talking bird was never shown at the auction. It was simply absent, and he continued to wait. He asked the butler about the time, and, upon hearing the answer, was surprised at how many hours had passed since then. Then Judy wondered if Esther had made it home yet, and realized he should apologize for not being there on time. He is sure that Esther is not so naive as to wait for him all this time without a reason and tolerate his lateness. Judy decided to take a short stroll through the garden to clear his head and spotted Esther there with her maid. Their quiet conversation immediately caught his attention and made him stop. He wondered why she was there alone. When Judy turned in their direction, Esther noticed his gaze and quickly turned around. Her eyes met his, and she immediately knew he was there. This left her slightly confused and with the feeling that his appearance had been unexpected. Judy couldn't contain his emotion and called her a fool, though the words came out with a hint of irritation. He wondered why Esther was wandering around alone without any real reason, as if she didn't care about herself. He couldn't understand why the girl was still waiting for him, even though he'd been delayed for several hours and couldn't have arrived sooner. This made him wonder about her patience and devotion. Judy also noticed that the sun was almost setting, and Esther still hadn't returned home. This seemed odd and a little alarming to him, as she was usually more organized. Realizing his words might have hurt Esther, Judy tried to apologize. It was important to him that she understand that he hadn't meant to hurt her or make her uncomfortable with his harsh tone. He noticed her smile, genuine and warm, like a light from within. His gaze spoke of deep affection, as if his heart beat faster just from her smile. The girl looked around calmly, not trying to give anyone away or chase anyone away. She felt comfortable here, and she decided to stay, taking her place where she liked to sit. Overall, there was no reason for worry or anxiety. Everything seemed calm and natural, as if nothing bad had happened at all. He noticed that she was there, and although he doubted it, he decided not to make the situation worse and to go home, forgetting everything that had happened that evening. He offered her to sit on his shoulders, realizing that the girl was probably tired after a long day and was ready to help carry her home. At first, she didn't want to, but he insisted, and nevertheless carefully lifted her onto his shoulders to ease her fatigue and facilitate a speedy return. The girl asked him if it was hard for him to wear it, because it might come off if he got tired or felt discomfort. The guy said she should stop calling him sir now, because there had been no formal boundaries between them for a long time. It began to sound strange and unnecessary, like a barrier between them. The girl was confused and didn't know how to act now, since she'd always called him that. It was part of her upbringing and habits. She felt like something was missing in their relationship without that address. Jude explained that they should address each other differently now, as they were no longer just acquaintances, but a true family in spirit. He wanted her to feel closer and more free around him. When the girl finally said the word brother, he immediately became embarrassed and blushed, but smiled sincerely. He felt the warmth and joy radiating from that simple word, bringing them even closer together. The man asked her to understand the reason for his lateness, explaining that it was for an important and respectful matter that required patience and understanding. He wanted her not to worry about his delay. The girl noticed that he had actually arrived, and that in itself was a good sign. Her heart calmed a little. She realized that the wait had not been in vain, and now everything would be fine. Judy promised not to break his word again, as if he had decided to make amends forever. The girl, however, thought she had simply had a good time while waiting for him to arrive. The guy noticed that she was still waiting for him, despite everything that had happened. This was important, because her waiting spoke of something more than just chance. He also warned the girl not to tell anyone else that she liked to wait for someone, as this could cause unnecessary questions and anxiety. The guy promised that he would make anyone who dared to make her wait longer than necessary feel sorry for her, showing his determination and care for her. His words sounded sincere and instilled faith in his kindness, as if he was truly ready to protect her from any troubles. She felt comfortable next to him, and she felt warmth and safety when he held her in his arms. This feeling of protection filled her soul, as if she were in a safe haven from the rest of the world. The maid, watching the girl, noticed that she was already fast asleep. The day's accumulated worries and anxieties had given way to a deep, restful sleep that carried her completely away to a world without worry. The girl was quite tired after the entire day, and looking at her at that moment, he felt like a real older brother for the first time. His responsibility for her became palpable and important like never before. He hadn't expected Esther to be so light, like a feather, and was surprised by how easy she was to carry. If he'd known he'd have to care for someone so closely, he would have started preparing ahead of time. Deep down, he made a promise to himself. Everything that concerned Esther, her wishes, her requests, her needs, would now come first for him, above everything else. The morning began with an unusual sensation, a light touch, warm and gentle, as if someone was carefully trying to bring her back from sleep to reality, awakening her softly and delicately. The girl didn't understand who it was. Everything was blurring before her eyes, and then a quiet, gentle voice suddenly spoke her new name, as if addressing her specifically, inviting her to wake up. He asked if she was awake, and when she slowly opened her eyes, there stood a boy with dark brown hair, looking at her intently, as if waiting for an answer. She'd seen him before, he'd always been there, but now he'd appeared again, and everything had changed. The heat that had plagued her before had vanished, and she could breathe much easier and feel calmer. He asked her never to get sick and to take care of herself, because every time she felt ill, his heart seemed to clench in pain. He felt helpless and unable to influence her condition. She felt so warm and comfortable in his arm, as if all the care and support came from him. He held her hand tightly, and this feeling of protection and attention brought her peace and relief. Despite this, she still couldn't understand who he was or where he came from in her life. His face seemed alien, yet strangely familiar, as if she'd known him all her life, though that was impossible. His kindness and sensitivity amazed Esther. She could never have imagined that someone could show such sincere care and tenderness, treating her with such attention and warmth. In the morning, when Mrs. Esther opened her eyes, everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone was immensely happy that she had finally woken up. Judy sat next to her, his expression a mixture of worry and joy. He looked at her intently, immediately wondering how she was feeling and whether she recognized him after the long silence. Esther was surprised to see so many people gathered around her. She quietly asked why they were there, as she herself still didn't fully understand what had happened these past few days. It all started after Esther returned from a walk and felt extremely weak. A high fever soon developed, and she spent 2 difficult and painful days in a row in the heat. One of the servants suggested that the cause of her condition could be the awakening of holiness within her. This unusual power could explain the sharp change in her health and sudden deterioration. However, even taking into account such strange reasons, her rapid recovery in 2 days seemed unusual and almost incredible for an ordinary illness, too sharp and rapid. Realizing how much worry and anxiety her condition had caused her, Esther quietly apologized to everyone who had worried about her, explaining that she had not meant for things to turn out this way. Duke Devon responded kindly that there was no need to apologize for something that wasn't her fault. The main thing was that the fever had subsided and everything would be fine now. He suggested that perhaps she was born quite weak, and because of this, her body reacted so sharply, even to a mild cold. But Esther gently objected, saying that she was rarely sick, and most likely she had simply caught a cold on the road. After all, the journey had been long and tiring. Taking this into account, the Duke ordered that Esther be shown to a doctor, as the journey was not an easy one, and her condition required the attention of a specialist. People brought her a small hair, saying that it was just a gift, not worth any special attention, as if it were something ordinary and unremarkable. But then they added that they were giving it to her specifically, because, according to them, there was something in common between her and this rabbit that made them surprisingly similar. The girl did not immediately grasp the meaning of the words. Only later did it dawn on her that, by calling her like a rabbit, they perhaps meant that she was defenseless. Judy had always been peculiar, and, in truth, the girl had felt something like this before. A strange excitement, as if something was waking up inside. She had little doubt that the awakening of divine power would soon occur, because everything inside her told her that the moment was already near. She wondered if it had anything to do with her now living with the Duke, because she couldn't understand why this feeling had appeared so early. She also remembered the boy who in her dream asked her not to get sick anymore, as if he knew that she was suffering even when she was silent. It seemed like this boy's heart responded every time she felt ill, as if there was a special invisible connection between them. This was not the first time this had happened. Again and again, the image of the boy, not fully discernible, appeared in her dream, as if he were only part of a whole. And yet, she could not understand who he really was, the one who came to her in her dreams, leaving behind a feeling of warmth. She could no longer forget the feeling of comfort and care that he left behind, and now she missed him as if she had lost someone close. That evening, Dorothy, the very servant who was assigned to her personally and knew how important it was not to disturb anyone without reason, knocked on her door. Dorothy entered cautiously and asked if she could come in, and the doctor, whom she had brought on orders from her superiors, followed her into the room. It turned out that this order came from the Duke himself, and he insisted that a doctor examine the girl in case she had been poisoned on the road. The doctor was sternly reminded to be careful, as the girl was still very weak, but he confidently replied that he was well versed in his work. It took a long time before the girl spoke up herself, assuring him that she felt well, and asking him not to continue these examinations. After a hard day, the Duke came into her chambers to personally check how the inspection was going, and to ensure that everything was done properly. He looked at her closely and noticed that she began to look more lethargic and detached, and this made him uneasy. The girl tried to calm him down, saying that she was fine. She was just tired from the examinations, because they took too much energy. But the doctor insisted that he could not complete the examination, since everything seemed fine on the outside. But to be sure, he needed to continue. She was sure that if the doctor wanted, he would find an illness in her even where it could not be, just to make a diagnosis and worry the Duke about something. At some point, the girl noticed how strangely he was looking at her, as if he was calculating or evaluating something, as if it wasn't her health that really interested him. She didn't immediately understand the meaning hidden behind his gaze, and froze, unable to believe what was happening, simply stunned by the incomprehensible tension. When she finally decided to meet his gaze, she realized that something was wrong in his eyes, but he suddenly said that my lady was completely fine, and smiled. However, he also clarified that her body is weakened. She lags behind her peers in terms of endurance, and she also has severe dehydration, which needs to be monitored. That look of his seemed frighteningly familiar to her. The same coldness and contempt with which the women in the temple had looked at her before, as if she had already done something wrong. But the girl couldn't understand why he was suddenly behaving like this. Maybe he had a long-standing conflict with the master, and she had become an accidental target of his displeasure. She quietly apologized, reminding him that she had already told him that she was fine, but she looked as if she was ready to sink into the ground from embarrassment. To this the Duke responded calmly, saying that he did not understand why she was asking for forgiveness. Illness was not a reason for shame, and there was no need to apologize for it at all. The girl admitted she wanted to apologize, and he replied that he didn't know how everything had happened in the church. He should have called a doctor, at least to make sure she was healthy. That would have calmed everyone down a bit and alleviated unnecessary anxiety. The Duke assured her that she was not to blame for anything, because illnesses do not appear due to anyone's fault, especially not due to the fault of a child who was already frightened. That's why he gently made it clear that there was no need to worry, and that there was no point in worrying about the past, because everything was already behind them and she was next to them. His words were warm and full of care, causing the tension in the air to dissipate, taking with it the anxiety and heavy self-deprecation. She felt again that same warmth, like when she was sleeping and felt safe, as if someone was hugging her. That's why she was so grateful, and her eyes filled with genuine gratitude. Outside, the rain was pouring down, and he hoped the children were safe. If it weren't for the work that had fallen through, the Duke would have definitely gone to visit them, but, alas, circumstances were stronger than his desire. Ben noted that it was immediately obvious from the Duke's face that he was thinking about those children, and how unfair it was that such a man was called a monster when he was actually kinder than most. It had been a long time since there had been such a heavy downpour. The girl in the temple seemed agitated, as if she were uneasy about everything that was happening. The Duke suddenly turned his attention to Ben when he noticed a servant knocking on the door. It was Esther, looking agitated and hurried. Barely catching her breath, she announced that she had come with important news for the Duke. Her face was filled with concern and her voice trembled with anxiety. At that moment, the lady suddenly felt very ill, so abruptly that she could not even get up from her seat, as if her whole body had become motionless. The Duke rushed into her chambers without delay, trying in confusion to understand why she was sitting under the blanket and not rising to greet him. Hearing footsteps, she slowly raised her head and noticed the Duke enter the room, frowning and worried about her condition. He quietly said that it was just him, and now she needed to try to calm down, because he was nearby and nothing bad would happen. Then he carefully asked her what had happened to her, and she, with a trembling voice, begged him to kill her right now to stop her suffering. All the pain that lived inside her burst out. She could no longer breathe, could no longer live, as if everything around her was collapsing. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she begged to be spared the torment, the emptiness that filled her entire existence. She suddenly remembered how Raphael had said that she was always in a bad mood during such rains, and she, Esther, should show understanding. Raphael then asked Dina to entertain her a little, help her relax, distract her from oppressive thoughts, and drive away her melancholy. Esther, still not having recovered from the recent nightmare, nevertheless gathered her strength, and in a trembling voice asked for forgiveness, admitting that she had done wrong. The heaviness in her heart wouldn't go away. She felt truly bad, because she realized that she had made a mistake, and this feeling was eating her up from the inside. Duke Devon, noticing her condition, cried out Esther's name, but was completely perplexed, not understanding what was happening to his adopted daughter at that moment. Raphael was still standing before her eyes, and therefore she was frightened when she saw the Duke, as if he were a vision. He came closer and calmly said that there was no danger. She was safe, and now she didn't have to be afraid, because everything was really already behind her. He wanted to know if she understood where she was. But Esther, still confused, asked anxiously if they were in the temple now. Then the Duke, with gentle severity, replied that this was not a temple at all, but his estate, and now she was at home, where nothing threatened her. Esther lowered her head guiltily and apologized again for making a noise. She didn't mean to disturb anyone with her screaming. The girl explained that whenever it rained and she was locked inside, Raphael would make fun of her, and now she was left with that pain. But then, as if convincing herself, she added that everything was fine now. It was just a bad dream, and there was nothing more to worry about. The man suddenly wondered what was going on in this temple, and out of the corner of my ear, I caught the name Raphael, which sounded with some strange hint of alarm and significance. He remembered how Esther had spoken with such hopelessness, as if she were begging, asking him to take away her pain, even if it meant killing her. Then the gentleman, sitting down next to her, calmly promised that he would stay with her until the rain stopped, as if this moment was something important for both of them. He saw her flinch and realized she was frightened. She seemed to understand that he had a lot to do, but he assured her that he could work here, next to her. Carefully laying Esther on the bed, He gently asked if anyone had offended her in the temple. His voice was calm, but his eyes hid worry. Esther denied it, saying that she was fine, but he heard the uncertainty in her voice and didn't believe her at all. It sounded too forced. He quietly asked her when she had started to be so afraid of thunder, and a memory flashed in her eyes, as if she was returning to something from the past. Esther admitted that it all started a long time ago, back in the temple, and then he said with heaviness that he still didn't know what she had to go through there. But now, in his home, he would not allow anyone to harm her. He promised to protect her always, and his words were filled with firm determination. Now Esther had no need to be afraid. Her father had promised he would always be there. There was a firmness in his voice, and it reassured her more than any words. At that moment, Judy slowly approached them and asked her father in surprise why he had come to the nursery so late and what was going on there. Father suddenly became visibly agitated. He then asked Judy why he wasn't asleep yet and what had made him leave his bed at such an hour. The boy admitted he simply heard a loud noise and couldn't sleep. He decided to check if everything was okay and was especially worried about Esther. He thought perhaps his father was as worried as he was. Judy also noticed that Esther's eyes were red, as if she had recently cried. He realized that she was upset and said that it was good that he had come. Now they could sleep together, and he would be there to guard her sleep. The father approved of this care and added that it would be nice if Judy stayed overnight with her on rainy nights, so that she would not be scared. Judy was delighted and immediately asked if he could really spend the night with her. Her father replied that he could stay until the fear went away. Then Esther anxiously asked if her father would leave after they fell asleep. He shook his head and promised to stay with them until morning. Judy seemed to have already fallen asleep, and the girl expressed the thought that it would be wonderful if this creature were beside her in the morning. Such comfort seemed important and necessary to her. Esther thought that if this creature were next to her in the morning, her day would begin better. She wanted to feel support and security from the very beginning. At this point, Ben entered the room, where the gentleman announced that everyone was already asleep and there was nothing to worry about. Peace reigned in the house, and there was no cause for alarm. Apparently, Esther has unpleasant memories associated with the storm. Perhaps she was bullied in the temple, and these terrible experiences left a deep mark on her soul. Ben noted that while compiling his dossier on Esther, he had found no evidence of such injuries. This meant he needed to dig deeper, to learn more about her life in the temple and about Raphael. Raphael is the Duke's daughter, and while her origins don't really matter, if she did torture Esther, she will definitely pay for it to the fullest extent. She will have to pay for all her actions. The next morning, the girl woke up to find Judy's father and brother standing next to her, unexpected company. They were still close, and this was not at all what Esther had expected after a night full of anxiety and fear. Everything was happening differently than she had imagined. She didn't think she would be able to fall asleep until the morning, perhaps due to the attack of fear that had shaken her deeply and left her with no peace. They truly seemed like a real family to her, so sincerely were they worried and concerned about her, as if it were something very important to everyone. Their care was palpable in every look and movement. His Highness and his younger brother, Judy, never spoke again of what had happened yesterday. It seemed they had decided to leave the subject alone, so as not to upset the girl or cause her unnecessary worry. They were probably afraid that their questions might awaken painful memories in her that she had so far tried to keep to herself, preferring not to remember what had caused her pain and anxiety. The girl met Denny in the hallway, and they exchanged greetings. He was busy reading, as usual, and their brief meeting was calm and relaxed, without unnecessary conversation or tension. She noticed that he was always reading something, and Denny explained that books are food for the mind, and knowledge always gives strength, so he pays a lot of attention to them and tries to learn something new every day. He asked her what she was doing now, and the girl admitted that she was simply wandering around the house, not knowing where else to go or what to do in this large space, which still remained alien to her. Denny asked if she would like to join him and walk in the garden together, because he was also going there and did not want to be alone, and a walk in company would be much more pleasant and interesting. The girl was surprised and asked if she could really go with him, since she had not been allowed to walk freely before, to which Denny replied that he was bored alone and would be glad to have her company this time. This was the girl's first walk in this particular part of the garden, and she carefully followed him along another path, which seemed unfamiliar to her, but at the same time captivating in its silence and beauty. The first thing Denny did was to apologize to her for perhaps not having paid enough attention or been kind enough before, and wanted to show that he was now ready to be her real friend and supporter. He mentioned the garden only in passing because he was planning to go somewhere else. He didn't want the maids, who were constantly walking around the house, to find out about his plans and interfere with their implementation. He also lied, saying that she could actually go with him, so that she wouldn't doubt or be afraid, because he wanted the girl to feel free and be able to spend time without unnecessary restrictions. She couldn't understand why this was necessary, and he promised to explain everything now. Judy was a simple guy, so he took his words easily and believed them without question. While he doesn't yet view her as a younger sister, he's in no rush to embrace a close relationship. That requires time and an understanding that hasn't yet developed. First, he needed to find out more about her, who she was, where she was from, how she lived, what she kept in her soul, before he could draw any conclusions. In the evening, when a thunderstorm was raging outside the window, Denny was reading a book as usual, getting ready to go to bed soon, immersed in his thoughts and the pages. Suddenly, he noticed that Judy had stood up and was heading somewhere, as if something important had drawn him at this late hour, when everyone should already be resting. Denny wondered where Judy was going so late and what could be so important as to disrupt her routine and sleep. He followed him quietly and saw that Judy was heading to Esther's room, where she began talking to the Duke as if they were discussing something very important. Everything that was happening became even more curious and mysterious, because few could have expected or understood such a conversation at night at first glance. It seems that some kind of connection is being established between them. Not only the Duke, but Judy himself shows special attention and interest in her. First it was Dad, now Judy was also interested in the girl, but he couldn't figure out what exactly made her so special for both of them. It seemed to him that the girl was quite smart, with her own views and inner world, which was worth getting to know her deeper. This feeling made him want to understand what kind of person she really was, not just from rumors, but from the inside, from her actions and thoughts. His interest in her grew with each passing day, and he increasingly wanted to know the truth about her and reveal all the secrets that she hid within herself. He led her to a small hole in the fence and told her it was a dog hole. She knew about it, but he insisted he didn't recognize her as a sister. She didn't understand why he was doing this. The guy said they needed to get out through this particular hole. It looked like he was going to chase her out of the estate. She was confused, not knowing why he suddenly needed this. He explained that no one would notice their escape, since he had important business in the village, and therefore they could leave calmly without arousing suspicion among those around them. The girl asked again if he wanted her to go with him, but he did not insist. She could stay if she did not want to go. The guy noticed that she still agreed, although she was surprised, because it was he who asked her to take this step first. After that, Denny fell silent, lost in her thoughts, trying to understand what would happen next and why he was acting so strangely. He spoke again, confirming that they really did need to go now. There were still a lot of things to do that needed to be done in time. The girl was very surprised and even a little stunned when they finally arrived at the village. Everything around her seemed completely new and unfamiliar, as if she had entered another world. The surroundings were incredibly beautiful and vibrant. Crowds of people bustling about their business, brightly colored stalls, and the aroma of freshly baked goods. All of this created an atmosphere of true celebration and warmth. My father told me he'd met her once in church, though he himself wasn't entirely sure what it was about her that had drawn him so much. It was a strange but important encounter for him. Denny suddenly noticed that he remembered an urgent matter that he needed to go to immediately, and he told the others about it, slightly diverting attention from the girl. The girl decided to support Denny and offered to go with him, but then changed her mind and said that it would be better for him to go alone, so as not to distract each other. Denny asked the girl to wait for him in a certain place nearby, assuring her that he would return soon and everything would be fine, trying to calm her down. She agreed, realizing that she would have to be alone for a while. But she was internally preparing herself for the fact that she would have to wait quite a long time. The girl asked if she would be left here completely alone, and Denny assured her that he would be back very quickly, additionally clarifying whether she would mind waiting here. She replied that she didn't mind and would definitely wait for his return, and the guy, having said goodbye, quickly left, disappearing into the crowd. The girl immediately felt that Denny was most likely going to leave her here alone, and this realization caused her anxiety and worry. She was unexpectedly invited to go with him, and immediately felt that something was wrong here, as if there was some secret or danger hidden behind it. Perhaps I was not happy with her appearance, and she did not object, since she herself was planning to leave soon and not stay here for long. This was unpleasant for her, because both the Duke and Judy treated her with kindness, and she appreciated their concern, despite all the difficulties. Suddenly, several men approached her and asked warily what the little girl was doing there alone, without supervision. They added that they had never seen her there before, and from her manners and clothes, they judged that she was a noble lady. Perhaps she should have a bodyguard with her. They hadn't been doing well financially lately, so they were lucky. They might be able to earn some money at the expense of the girl's parents. Her outfit looked very expensive, and this meant that the family was well off, but the main thing was to understand that she was not from Teresia's line. The girl asked them if they could kill her, and the men were amazed by such an unexpected and bold question. She explained that there was no point in kidnapping her. She had already been abandoned, and no one would pay the ransom for her. Because of this, no one will be able to sell it or use it because it is too expensive, but no one needs it. If they wanted to get rid of her, it would be better to kill her right away. She was even ready to give them the knife for this. After these words, Denny approached her, and his face expressed surprise and incomprehension of what was happening. He noticed that the lesson had proven very labor-intensive and taken much longer than he had expected. He apologized for the delay and inquired who exactly the people were who had attracted their attention. The men were pleased to hear that the noble offspring, usually surrounded by servants, were strolling freely without guards. They looked strange, as if unaccustomed to danger and unafraid of anything. Denny asked them if they realized how serious they were being when they threatened such people. He wanted to know if they realized they could get into serious trouble. At first, the men didn't understand why Denny was talking like that, but when they saw his hair and eye color, they immediately noticed his resemblance to Duke Theresia and began to suspect who really stood before them. The boy looked very much like the Duke, and the men suspected they might be his children. One of the boys asked how long they planned to detain these people and if they had anything else important to say. Denny made it clear that if anyone dared even touch them, the consequences would be severe and unpleasant for the offenders. His warning was both threatening and convincing. The men quickly said they were just joking and didn't mean to start a fight. Frightened, they hurried away, unwilling to risk further exposure to the Duke's attention. They were almost certain that these were indeed representatives of the Teresia family, but they were unaware that the Duke also had a daughter, who now also played an important role. The men left, and in the meantime the girl's brother returned to the place where she could no longer return, and the situation began to unfold further. Denny, with a look of fear in his eyes, asked what she could possibly be thinking, acting so recklessly, putting herself and others in danger, without understanding the consequences of her actions. He admitted that he left her here on purpose, specifically to test how she would cope with this test, and to understand what she was really worth in this situation. He was curious how she would behave when she found herself completely alone, without prying eyes and support, when no one could control her or prompt her. In such circumstances, a person's true essence is most easily revealed, and his true thoughts and feelings, which he usually hides, become visible. She was sure that she wanted to get rid of him because she didn't like him at all, and he was interfering with her life, as if he were her enemy. The guy noted that he definitely did not wish her any harm, but on the contrary, he wanted to help and save her life at any cost. But he was surprised and frightened by how she could so calmly and heartlessly ask these men for something terrible: death. It was as if she were saying that her life meant nothing at all and was asking to simply be killed, as if the decision had already been made. He apologized for testing her so harshly, promising not to test her so hard again, because he really didn't want to leave her alone. Still, he understood that she had to stop asking others for death, that it was a path to nowhere and harmful to herself. She must learn to appreciate her life, even if it seems hard and filled with pain. There is meaning and hope in it. It was strange, because before, her very existence seemed like a mistake and a cause of suffering, as if she was to blame for everything. He also noticed that she was needed by her family, that they were waiting for her and loved her, which meant that it was time to return and start valuing herself. Denny said they didn't consider her their sister, and the guy initially said he didn't know, but soon took it back, as if realizing he was wrong. Enough of these searches, which led only to danger and death, and everyone who was near them at that moment understood this. The girl agreed and smiled, realizing that it was impossible to talk about death so carelessly. It was too serious and not worth frivolous words. The father turned his attention to the boy and asked if he wanted to tell him anything about the events of the previous day, as if expecting an important confession or explanation. Hearing his father's voice, the boy felt tension. His heart began to beat faster, and it became clear that the conversation would be difficult and serious. Denny admitted his carelessness, explained that things had not gone as he had hoped, and realized that the consequences had been unpleasant. He apologized for what happened, and his father, in turn, expressed gratitude for his honesty, noting that this is the most important thing in such situations. Although they have not yet had time to get to know each other well and get used to each other, Esther has already become part of their family, and for them, she is not a stranger, but a close relative. The father expressed hope that no misunderstandings would arise in the future, and that everyone would be able to maintain peace and understanding among themselves. He also said that this time, he wants to hear their opinions and is counting on an honest and open conversation to avoid problems in the future. The boys' birthdays, Dennis and Judy, were approaching. The whole family was gradually preparing for the event, and the atmosphere in the house was filled with the anticipation of celebration and fun. Judy expressed her desire to throw a masquerade party where guests could guess who was hiding under the masks, which would add fun intrigue and mystery. Denny, on the other hand, thought that a masquerade was too simple an idea and suggested holding a literary discussion so that the guests could not only be entertained, but also gain new knowledge. They agreed that the evening promised to be interesting and educational, as this format of celebration would help them have a good time and broaden their horizons. The Duke, after hearing his son's ideas, announced that he was not planning to do anything special for their birthday this year, preferring to keep the celebration modest. Denny and Judy were a little surprised by this news, but their father confidently confirmed his decision, leaving no room for doubt. The Duke also noted that at the upcoming celebration, they would introduce the girl Esther to the public, which would be an important event for everyone present. The news stunned the girl, who had not expected to become the center of attention, but the Duke explained that the birthday was the perfect moment for all their people to gather together. Judy agreed that it was indeed a good idea for Sebastian to finally see Esther, but her father warned that she should not be used in any arguments or conflicts. The girl had absolutely no idea what to do now, as her plan had been to disappear quietly and unnoticed. But after what had happened, that was no longer possible. She felt confused and afraid. Her father noted that the celebration was scheduled for 3 months, and until then he intended to begin her education. He believed it was best to begin with etiquette lessons to prepare her for social life. He hoped the celebration would leave the girl with only pleasant memories and help her feel more confident in society. It was very important to him that she be able to adapt. The girl was very grateful to both him and Ben, who, on his orders, found experienced teachers for her, specially trained for a young lady of high circles. These were the best representatives of the academy, specialists with an impeccable reputation and a high level of training, who were able to ensure high-quality training and education. Ben noted that this academy accepts only 1 student per year, which speaks to the seriousness and exclusivity of the training, accessible only to a select few. At the moment, the Count's daughter is studying there, and apparently her parents paid a very large sum for it. But the Duke is ready to pay 3 times more, which his position allows. It would be a good idea to find a similar mentor for the twins so that their upbringing and education would meet the high standards and requirements of the Duke's family. The Duke himself did not want to spend extra money unnecessarily. He even preferred to save on boys, not allocating as much to them as to a girl. Ben said she conducted a deeper investigation and found that no one confirmed the facts of cruel punishment or abuse at the temple where the girl was held. They were told that all the candidates were the same, and none of them were locked inside. Freedom of movement was the norm for them, and no one held them captive or imprisoned. If the priestess had exhibited cruelty or abuse, it would have been immediately noticed. Such things could not go unnoticed in a temple under constant scrutiny. The gentleman asked if these facts were sufficient to be considered evidence. He wanted to understand how seriously one could take what he had heard and seen. He himself was able to learn a few things from the candidates themselves when he spoke with them. This helped him gain more information about what was happening inside the temple. Among all the girls, he managed to find one named Raphian, who was the only one there. She stood out from the rest, and this immediately caught his attention. So this was Duke Braun's daughter, who had been attending the temple from the very first day. This explained why she was treated with special attention. From the very beginning, they began preparing her to become a saint, investing much time and effort into her. This was her path, chosen in advance. If the violence in the church is carefully concealed and hushed up, it will be very difficult to understand what is happening. Information is carefully hidden from prying eyes. Finding out about the girl's true actions, if any, will be virtually impossible due to this protection and secrecy. The temple keeps everything under control. He understood that the task before him was very difficult, but despite this, he considered it necessary to try to find out something else and not give up halfway. According to Ben, who knew the temple from the inside, nothing suspicious or bad was happening there. He assured everyone that everything was calm and clean. No investigation had ever found any evidence of abuse, but when the girl asked him to kill her, he sensed something was wrong. It was alarming. He couldn't figure out what exactly had happened to her that mysterious night. Everything remained a mystery, one he couldn't fully unravel or understand. Esther was very pleased, because now she had the opportunity to draw as much as she wanted on real, high-quality paper and not on something modest. This was a real joy for her, because in the temple she was not allowed to create and draw freely. Everything was strict and limited. The reason was not a lack of paper, but that her interest in drawing was constantly monitored and not allowed to express itself fully. Now, finally, Esther had real freedom and could create without restrictions, which filled her with joy and inspiration. The girl thought about what other interesting and unusual things she would like to depict on a piece of paper to make her creativity even brighter. At that moment, the maid Dorothy approached her and quietly called her mistress, informing her of the need for her presence in another place. Dorothy did not hide her admiration for Esther's drawings, considering them truly incredible and amazing in their execution. She immediately noticed that the girl had drawn a portrait of her, which was very touching and pleasant for the maid. Esther explained that the portrait was a gift for Dorothy, because she always helps her, and with this drawing she wanted to express her gratitude. This process brought the girl real pleasure, and it was unclear where she got so many talents, as if someone had secretly instilled them in her from birth. The maid was sure that this needed to be reported to His Highness immediately, since such a talent was rare, but the girl insisted that this was not the case, that everyone was capable of such a thing. In the temple, they constantly laughed at her creations, considering them too strange or childish, although they themselves could not repeat even half of her masterpieces. However, the maid was firmly convinced of something else. The lady was simply brilliant and deserved to have her talents recognized at their true worth. It seemed like a real miracle, an incredible fact that all this was drawn by a girl who was only 10 years old, as if nature itself had rewarded her with an extraordinary gift. But Esther thought the maid was just flattering her, and at that moment her younger brother Denny suddenly entered the room, breaking the quiet atmosphere. He immediately asked what was going on, because Dorothy's cries could be heard even from the corridor, and this made him come to check the situation. Denny sat down next to Esther and said that since she already called Judy brother, she could now call him the same, as if inviting her to a friendly brotherly union. The girl agreed, and the boy realized she acted as if they were family, not just acquaintances. Sometimes she even called him brother, and it sounded sincere. Denny now wanted her to actually do it. If the girl was ready to call him brother, he decided to accept it and support her in this intention. When she called him bro, the boy felt a little embarrassed, but he couldn't help but smile. It sounded unexpected, but very sweet and warm to him. He thought it was wonderful and said to himself that the girl should continue in the same spirit, because he now really felt like her older brother. The guy noticed she was drawing something and asked what it was. She admitted she'd made a couple of sketches, and he smiled and remarked that she liked it. She replied that she was a bit into drawing, and he asked if she could draw him too and how difficult it would be for her. The girl admitted that she did not consider herself a good artist, but the maid insisted that this was not true and that people thought that she was a real artist. There was no reason to doubt her, so Denny asked her to do it without hesitation, completely confident in her abilities and the sincerity of her desire to help. The girl, a little embarrassed, admitted that she generally agreed and promised to draw him right away, trying not to show her excitement and shyness. He was very grateful for this and immediately sat down at the table so that she could calmly and carefully sketch his image, paying attention to every detail. He noticed that she was completely concentrated, and her face expressed an unusual thoughtfulness, as if she was immersed in the creative process. The girl asked why he was looking at her so intently, but he replied that it was nothing. He was just observing and thought it was worth continuing to work. A few minutes later, she announced that the drawing was ready and surprised him with her speed. The work was completed much faster than he expected. The girl admitted that she draws quite rarely, so one shouldn't expect anything special from her, and he might even be disappointed with the result. But when she showed him the drawing, his expression instantly changed, and it became clear that the image had evoked strong emotions in him. He anxiously asked what this drawing meant and why she had not told him before about her unusual gift, which turned out to be much deeper than he thought. She drew beautifully, so well that he couldn't understand how a child could create such vibrant and vivid pictures. His amazement knew no bounds. The girl thought everyone could draw like that, as if it were a common skill. He, however, thought she'd probably learned it at the temple, where they teach many crafts and arts. But she confidently said that this was not so, and then he realized that no one had specifically taught her this. The talent was in her naturally, without any training. It seemed incredible because such talent is rare, and she truly wasn't ashamed to boast of such a gift, which set her apart from others. He said that she was very talented and, smiling, gently stroked her head, as if he wanted to show how much he appreciated and admired her. The girl insisted that everything was not so simple, but he did not argue and hurried to the butler Gelbert to tell him about her unusual skill. The girl was stunned by what everyone was saying about her talent. She herself couldn't believe that those around her actually considered her drawing special. She wanted to be the best at something, and such praise brought her real pleasure. She wanted to be praised even more often and for different things. He was said to have noted that regular training was no longer enough. Something more was needed to develop her abilities to a new level. They said we can't relax because the situation is tense. What if war starts tomorrow? Everyone needs to be prepared because a time of change can come suddenly and change everything in an instant. The army is currently in a very poor state. Its combat effectiveness is questionable, and no one can be trusted. Too many problems and internal discord are hindering preparations for potential threats. The Duke expressed interest in Esther's well-being, and the butler informed him that she was currently in the garden. This suggested that the girl was engaged in something important or enjoyable while outdoors. He thought she was simply taking a stroll, but the butler clarified, Esther was drawing. This added a new dimension, as drawing requires attention and inspiration, not just a stroll. The Duke was surprised and asked if she really did draw, and the butler remarked that the girl was very good at it. Such talent at her age was an unexpected delight for everyone. Then the gentleman thought for a moment and decided that he must definitely go to the garden to see it with his own eyes and, perhaps, personally evaluate her skills and efforts. He quickly found Esther and said he'd also like to receive a gift from her: her drawing. This simple gesture spoke of his warm feelings for the girl and his desire to support her. The gentleman had previously noticed that the girl was so focused on her drawing that she didn't even notice the presence of other people. Such deep concentration commanded respect, a sign of true mastery. His Highness seemed simply captivated by this girl. His attention and interest in her were obvious, and no one doubted that Esther occupied a special place in his heart. The girl was pondering what to draw when she noticed someone looking at her. This moment interrupted her creative process and forced her to pay attention to her surroundings. Then she suddenly realized the Duke was sitting quietly next to her, a presence she hadn't noticed at all, so immersed was she in her thoughts and drawing. His presence was unexpected and a little frightening. The girl became intrigued when he managed to approach her so unnoticed. The Duke explained that he had been nearby and heard her drawing, so he decided to pop in and see what she was making. He was told that the girl had already managed to draw something, and this immediately attracted his attention, because he was always interested in seeing how talent manifested itself in young subjects. The Duke found out that the drawing was of Denny, and the girl admitted that, in her opinion, it was not very successful and did not look very much like her. However, the Duke noted that the butler had said it had turned out very beautiful. He even asked if she could draw him, which caused the girl a slight embarrassment. Hearing that they wanted a portrait of the Highness from her, the girl felt fear and excitement, afraid that she would not cope with such a difficult task and ruin the work. The Duke noticed her confusion and quickly added that, if it was too difficult, then there was no need to worry and take on any extra burden, because he did not want to strain her. The girl replied that it was not a matter of fear, but rather that she was genuinely not very confident in her artistic abilities and was afraid of not living up to expectations. The Duke said that his office was rather empty and deserted, and he had long wanted to hang some beautiful portrait on the wall, so such a painting would be very appropriate. If she refuses, then he'll have to find another artist, and that's a great pity, because he was hoping for her work. He's truly sorry it turned out this way. His Highness, however, doesn't tell the truth and doesn't blush. He had previously told his butler that he didn't need the portrait at all, concealing his true thoughts and feelings. The girl didn't know the whole truth and sincerely believed that he really wanted to decorate the wall with the portrait that she would draw with her own hands, putting all her soul and effort into it. She stated that she was ready to take on this work if no one would interfere with her desire, and if her talent and efforts were accepted with respect and understanding. The gentleman wondered if she might actually be able to create this portrait, and the girl again confirmed her consent, adding that she would do so only if he approved. He felt deep gratitude for her decision, genuinely believing in her abilities and talents, which was expressed in his warm and respectful attitude toward her. His appreciation was genuine and unadulterated. The girl, inspired by his words, felt a surge of energy and inspiration. She set to work with great diligence, completely immersing herself in creating the portrait, undistracted by anything around her. Ben, realizing the gravity of the situation, approached the butler with questions about His Highness's whereabouts. He needed to convey important information urgently, without delay. The butler reported that His Highness was with his daughter, so Ben hurried there to convey to him all the necessary news in a timely manner. As he approached, Ben noticed the girl working enthusiastically on a drawing. He immediately realized that the lady possessed a truly remarkable artistic talent that was impossible to miss. Taking a step forward, Ben heard that the girl was actually creating a portrait of His Highness. This piqued his interest and a little surprise, as he hadn't expected such a gift. Ben recalled His Highness once saying that portraits irritated him and made him displeased. The remark struck him as odd and unexpected given the Duke's habits. However, noticing the Duke's gaze, Ben hastened to justify himself, explaining that he must have been confused or simply dreaming it. In fact, His Highness is very fond of portraits and always handles them with care. The butler also noted that the young ladies clearly had some kind of plan, as both looked genuinely happy and pleased with what was happening, as if there was a real understanding between them. It seemed surprising, because the man who was called a demon could show such kindness and gentleness that it went against his reputation and caused unexpected feelings. The gentleman approached Esther with a question about whether she really enjoyed drawing, showing a sincere interest in her hobbies and desires in creativity. The girl confirmed that she enjoyed drawing, and he then noted that perhaps she should seriously consider studying art, since she clearly had a talent for it. Esther replied that drawing was really fun and added that she was interested not only in paintings, but also in other types of art if she wanted to study them later. He promised to support her if the girl decided to seriously devote herself to drawing and developing her artistic abilities, because support was important to her. The girl did not understand why he was so kind and good to her, but she was sincerely grateful for his warm words and understanding, which instilled confidence and joy in her. She mustn't get used to kindness, because very soon she will have to leave this place. While everything around her seems bright and calm, she knows that the time of change is near, and it promises nothing simple. In such a short time, she had become too accustomed to the new conditions. Just a few minutes ago, she reported that she had completed all the tasks, as if she had already become part of this world she would soon leave behind. She tried to do everything to his liking, and she worried about every step. When the gentleman saw the result, he immediately told the bank to approach him. That meant a lot. He ordered a close look at what had been done. When the bank finally examined the work, it was completely astonished. What it saw exceeded all its expectations and silenced him. The drawing was so precise that it perfectly replicated the gentleman's portrait. Every detail was refined with astonishing precision, as if the artist had poured his whole soul into the work. He remarked that it had turned out very well, and his voice did not express surprise, but in his eyes you could see how deeply this work had touched him. A quiet joy without unnecessary words. He emphasized that her work wasn't just good, but almost divinely beautiful. Such a compliment was rarely heard from a gentleman, and for the girl, it was a true recognition of her talent. The girl was completely shocked, not expecting such high praise. Her heart was overflowing with emotions, surprise, joy, and a slight disbelief at how she had achieved such success. The gentleman wondered how the temple's influence might have affected his daughter. Perhaps a hidden talent had awakened within her, and she truly was a genius no one had previously suspected. He also announced that a dinner party would soon be held, at which he intended to show guests a portrait of his daughter, expressing his pride in her achievements and extraordinary talent. He then asked the butler where the portrait frame he had recently won at auction in Lawrence was, as he wanted to frame the painting as best he could. The butler replied that Denny had already taken the frame, and that Mr. Yes No had intended to hang his own portrait there, so the frame was now occupied. At that moment, the father remembered that his son had also received his portrait, and this made him think about the need for a different design option. Therefore, he asked the butler to find another, more luxurious frame, because the portrait of his daughter should take a worthy place at the dinner party and make an impression. The Duke noted with pleasure that he really liked this idea, and seeing the girl smile, he felt that she too was happy with such attention and care. In her memories, the Duke seemed much sterner than he appeared to be now, and this made the girl feel a little awkward when recalling the past. She couldn't understand why she thought of him that way back then, and why her feelings were so complicated, when his real attitude was completely different. The girl did not understand at all what exactly this severity was doing to her then, and what lessons she should have learned from those moments. At the most unexpected moment, the long-awaited dinner party arrived, and at it the gentleman proudly showed all the guests a portrait of his daughter, as a symbol of her talent and success. His Highness hadn't hosted a lavish dinner party in a long time, and today all the invited guests had arrived. The atmosphere was tense yet solemn, as everyone anticipated something momentous. No one could miss such an event, as the training in the East had recently concluded and been a great success. This inspired hope for new opportunities and change. Thanks to the gentleman's attentive and sensitive guidance, the participants' skill level increased several-fold. However, all this work seemed thankless, and His Highness did not receive the praise he deserved. The gentleman, with a slight smile, asked if everyone really considered the results a true success, casting doubt on their opinion. This left those gathered thinking and a little uneasy. There was silence. No one dared to argue, and since everyone agreed with the assessment, it meant that this was indeed the case. Success had indeed been achieved. Ben reported that the preparations were completely completed, and the gentleman said that it was now time to begin the main event of the evening, the official presentation. When the Duke asked everyone to pay attention, silence immediately fell over the room. The guests were stunned by the suddenness and seriousness of his request, as no one expected the event to take such an unexpected turn. No one could figure out what exactly the Duke was about to show, or why it was so important to him personally. The excitement in the air grew palpable with every second, and the guests' curiosity grew, making their hearts beat faster. Most of those present assumed that a work of art was hidden under the shroud, perhaps a painting or sculpture, that was about to be unveiled and presented to the public with honor. But the Duke's compassion and concern were completely at odds with the painting's expectations, and this only heightened the guests' interest. Everyone was even more eager to know what exactly the fabric concealed, sparking a flurry of speculation. The gentleman sensed the general curiosity growing and decided not to keep those present waiting any longer. He slowly lifted the veil to reveal to the guests the long-awaited secret he had kept secret for so long. He quickly removed the cloth, revealing a portrait underneath. At that moment, everyone froze, as no one expected to see exactly the image that immediately caught their attention. The portrait depicted His Highness himself, which came as a real surprise to everyone present. This fact sparked intense interest and many questions about the painting's origins. The portrait was executed with great skill, as if it were the work of a recognized master. Perhaps it was the creation of Pirco or Levin, whose name was famous for its high level of craftsmanship and subtle style. The style was somewhat reminiscent of the work of Ruby, who recently held an exhibition, but this portrait seemed unfamiliar to many and was particularly expressive and new. For the first time, those gathered saw such a creative approach, and it was clear the artist possessed exceptional talent. One of the men even felt a special power emanating from the painting. It is clear that there was some sacred energy at work here. The artists mentioned are truly talented and have already left a noticeable mark on the Empire's culture. But this work was special. However, this sketch was different from the others, because it was created by Ivan's daughter, which added special meaning and touchingness to the entire work. Everyone was shocked to learn that he actually had a daughter. This was a new and unexpected fact for those present, which made them reconsider their opinion. As it became known, a few days ago he adopted a girl from the temple, and now she officially became part of the Teresa family. For him, she was a daughter, and for his sons, a dear sister. Another reception was about to begin, and the Duke expected all his guests to attend without exception. He was meticulously preparing to ensure everything went perfectly and without a hitch. A slight sense of excitement hung in the air. That evening, the gentleman noticed that the moon was especially bright, casting a silvery halo around him. The sky seemed clear and calm, captivating his gaze, filling his mind with a quiet harmony. The Duke smiled to himself. Despite the cold wind swirling around him, he felt good standing outside and feeling the freshness. He savored the moment, as if he'd temporarily forgotten all his worries. This atmosphere was ideal for a heartfelt conversation, allowing one to frankly share thoughts and experiences. In these moments, every word took on special meaning and value. Suddenly, Benjamin approached the Duke from behind, looking joyful, as if in anticipation of a new meeting. His appearance brought a light note of pleasant excitement and friendly warmth into the air. The Duke had begun to think Benjamin wouldn't show, and was even a little upset. However, his fears proved unfounded. His friend did arrive, albeit late. Benjamin explained that he was delayed because he had to change a tire on the road. This little adventure almost derailed his plans, but he managed to cope and arrive anyway. The Duke noted that everything that was happening reminded him of the good old days. It was thanks to Benjamin's optimism that he was able to endure all the difficulties and trials of those years spent at the front. Benjamin smiled at the warm compliment given by His Highness, but immediately modestly noted that the Duke was exaggerating his role and significance in those events. The Duke then inquired why Benjamin looked a little glum. He admitted he felt a little awkward, but given their long-standing friendship, he decided to ask the Duke for a favor that was very important to him. The Duke expressed confusion about such a lengthy introduction, emphasizing that he is one of the few people truly trusted. Therefore, he believes management has the right to ask him for whatever they need. Benjamin noted that he had already seen this painting, a portrait that made him want to check whether his daughter had really created it without anyone's help, without outside interference. The gentleman confirmed that this was indeed the case and asked again what exactly the question was and why it raised any surprise or doubts. According to Benjamin, this sketch seems to radiate an extraordinary, almost divine energy that immediately stands out and attracts attention. Such power could only have been invested in the creation by a future saint, for only she is capable of filling the work with such a powerful charge of holy energy. Perhaps his adopted daughter will become the next saint, since it was she who was able to convey such a strong spiritual element into the painting. It is completely unclear how the girl left the temple, having such a huge supply of holy energy with her, which raises many questions. Benjamin was convinced that something didn't add up, and asked if he could ask the princess to draw a portrait of Mr. Noah to help him figure out the situation. The gentleman was surprised to hear the gentleman's name and asked again to make sure he understood correctly who exactly was being talked about. Benjamin smiled quietly, and the one standing next to him asked again if Benjamin really still cared about Noah so much, not believing that it could go on for so long. The Duke noted that Benjamin's loyalty is unusual and rare. Even if everyone turns their back on Noah, Benjamin will not abandon him in difficult times and will remain by his side until the very end, supporting him through every trial. Benjamin himself didn't consider his care to be anything special. For him, helping those in need was natural and obligatory, a kind of duty that required no special effort or merit. He saw Noah as a young man burdened with pain and suffering. No one knew the trials and tribulations Noah had endured before reaching the stage of his life he found himself at now. While Noah was alive, Benjamin dreamed of having a portrait of him, a symbol that would preserve his memory. This image could become a source of support and strength for those who cherish Noah for many years to come. The Duke decided to ask his daughter a favor. He wanted to see if she could complete the task, to create a portrait that would be deeply meaningful and significant for them all, capturing Noah's true essence. His opinion was very important to the Duke, but at the same time, he did not want to force her and respected her freedom of choice, not intending to force her. Benjamin said that, of course, he understood the situation and was very grateful to the Duke for his trust, but deep down he doubted whether it was worth asking her about it. The maid remarked that it was truly delightful and asked in surprise when this flower had managed to grow so large and strong. Esther smiled, though the maid was surprised. After all, the flower had been planted only a couple of days ago, and it had already bloomed so quickly. It seemed almost impossible. The girl thanked the maid and looked closely at the flower, not hiding her amazement. She felt it was a true miracle, difficult to explain. She didn't fully understand what exactly was happening to this flower, because it only responded to holy energy, which was a mystery to her. As Esther channeled her energy into the plant, it seemed to come alive before her eyes. The flower grew rapidly, as if absorbing all her power, growing larger and stronger with each passing second. It was a wondrous sight. The girl never expected everything to happen so quickly and spectacularly. The flower's growth exceeded all her wildest expectations and hopes, leaving her amazed at her own capabilities and the power she was only just beginning to realize. It's at such moments that abilities typically unfold, typically during this period of life. If others learn of the gift, they will inevitably want to lock the person with the power in a temple to control it or use it for their own purposes. Esther believed that after her escape, something would surely change in her life. But everything around her remained the same, and the girl could not understand why the world had not changed along with her and her destiny, which was only just beginning to unfold. The girls kept a close eye on Raphael, as rumors circulated that she would soon be proclaimed the next saint. Everyone awaited this event with excitement and trepidation, knowing it could change Rafian's position forever. For Rafian, one of a kind, this outfit emphasized her exceptional status and special position among the others, distinguishing her as the protagonist of the coming changes. Everyone realized that Rafian was truly different from the other girls. Her destiny was unique, and everyone saw that she was on a special path that would inevitably lead to significant events and changes in the future. Here she was, and the master sincerely appreciated her efforts for the good of the temple. His respect and gratitude were obvious, for her devotion did not go unnoticed. The girl calmly explained that she considered her actions a duty, so gratitude was unnecessary. She was convinced she was simply doing what she had to do and didn't expect any special recognition. In her hands lay the medicine intended for Saint Sepsis. This was an important remedy and symbolized the care and attention given to the old woman. The gentleman noticed how much faith resided in the girl's soul. Her sincerity and radiance were impressive. He saw that she possessed a rare purity that warmed and inspired. His thoughts assured him that the goddess was carefully watching over Rafian, protecting her from harm and guiding her along the right path. This added to his peace and confidence. The girl responded with a smile, full of gratitude for such warm and kind words. Her heart filled with lightness and joy at the recognition of her efforts. The gentleman had taken care in advance to convey to her everything she requested, carefully preparing everything necessary for her important mission. He understood how crucial every detail was in her case. He wished her good luck and a productive day, hoping that her efforts would bear fruit and be highly appreciated, since much depended on her success for everyone. The girl responded with a smile, conveying at that moment mutual respect and good wishes, as if an invisible thread of support and understanding had formed between them. Everything she did had a deep meaning. She served the empire and the goddess, following her ideals and remaining faithful to the cause to which she dedicated her entire life. When Rafian came to Saint Sepsis, she immediately recognized her voice, which spoke of the closeness and trust between them, as if years of shared history could be read in every sound. Saint Sepsis was already very old and exhausted. Her body and spirit needed rest and care. Years of devoted service had left their mark on her. Rafian brought the medicine and carefully placed it before the lady, gently asking her to try to rise. Her voice was calm, but it conveyed genuine concern for the saint's well-being. Then, Rafian asked how exactly the lady was feeling today, trying to catch every detail to understand how much relief had come or whether help was still needed. The saint quietly said that she herself didn't know how much longer her body could endure the pain and fatigue. It seemed she sensed the approaching moment when her destiny would finally be fully and inevitably fulfilled. She admitted that she heard the quiet call of the goddess, like a gentle, alluring voice that calls her beyond life, beyond the boundaries of suffering and time, forcing her to prepare to leave for a place where there is no longer pain. Rafian noted that it's best not to say such words out loud. They could frighten those who still cling to hope and destroy the faith of those who still expect a miracle and aren't ready to give up. She added that perhaps the goddess would still delay her call, and the lady should not rush to leave while she still had at least a drop of strength for the fight and the life that she could still live. The woman took a deep breath, looked warmly at Rafian, and acknowledged how important the support and care she was giving her was to her during this most difficult, terrible moment of her life. The girl could not hold back her tears. They flowed down her cheeks as she tightly squeezed the saint's hand, trying to convey through this gesture all her love and endless support, which can help in a moment of weakness. Rafian asked the lady to be patient for a little while. She carefully poured the medicine for her, hoping that it would bring relief and prolong her strength. This medicine really did make the saint feel better. The pain subsided a little, and a faint hope appeared for continuing the struggle. Duke Braun had specially obtained this medicine for the saint lady, having made a great deal of effort to obtain something that could at least help a little in her condition. The girl felt a sense of surprise when she heard her father's name, which sounded unexpected and seemed to spark a flash of forgotten feelings within her. The name seemed distant, yet at the same time profoundly important. The Rafians' constant efforts, Saint Sepsis's healing process accelerated significantly. Their care and support helped her find peace of mind much faster than expected. As a result of long labors and prayers, the saint will finally be able to reunite with the goddess to whom she has strived all her life, find peace, and forget all her suffering. The girl informed her mistress that the medicine had been prepared and was ready for use. She understood that this moment was very important and held the promise of improvement. She asked the Holy Lady to take the medicine, emphasizing the necessity of this step for a speedy recovery and relief of suffering. At the same time, the girl smiled, as if supporting and encouraging, urging him to take this small step at least for her own sake and for the sake of their common goal. Esther asked her maid to bring as many hyacinth seeds as possible, believing that they would help in further treatment and be beneficial. The maid assured that she would certainly fulfill the request, promising to contact the gardeners and provide everything necessary as soon as possible. The girl was sincerely grateful to Dorothy for her care and attention, appreciating the support the maid showed at such an important moment for everyone. Even though the process had already begun to develop, the girl still had some time to prepare and take all the necessary measures for further action. In her past life, the awakening lasted 6 months, and this experience gave her hope that the current process could also be controlled and predicted. The holy village possessed a special energy and influence, capable of influencing certain organisms in an unusual way, which gave hope for a successful outcome. Hyacinths are flowers that are particularly sensitive to sacred energy. They seem to sense it and immediately react to the slightest changes around them, becoming an indicator of power. Therefore, the simplest and most reliable way to understand how advanced the awakening was to grow these flowers. Their condition could be used to judge the strength and growth of the awakening. Previously, she hadn't even had the strength to grow hyacinths. This was a clear dividing line between what she could and couldn't yet accomplish in her new role. For this, she was scolded and reproached almost daily, although in reality, progress was being made. It just wasn't visible yet. They expected great results from her and didn't understand why. Where so many flowers came from remained a mystery. No one could explain why so many of them suddenly appeared. It seemed simply incredible. They asked the gardener about it. He tended the plot and should have known, but even he couldn't explain it. Those flowers weren't there yesterday. No one noticed the change. It was so strange and unexpected that no one could believe it. The hyacinths had bloomed in just one night. It seemed impossible, and no one understood what was happening around them. The girl was at a loss, unsure what to do with so many flowers. She hadn't expected so many to grow. She'd thought only a few buds would appear. She thought the most she'd see from this spot would be small shoots, but not many flowers. She couldn't believe she'd managed to grow so many in such a short time. If things continued like this, she wouldn't have 6 months left. Her entire region would awaken in just a couple of months. It was too fast and frightening, as the consequences were unpredictable. The plan was for her to escape with the Duke, who was about to leave, but the temple is planning to bring her back, forcing her to hurry as time is running out. But she doesn't want to leave this place in such a hurry. Everything around her feels cozy and warm, and she wants to linger a little longer, so as not to leave with a feeling of loss. She quickly became accustomed to the warmth and love she received here. It's completely different from what it was before, and now she finds it hard to imagine things being different, or having to leave everything behind. She can't understand what will happen to her next, because even now her heart has softened so quickly, as if she's already become attached and is afraid of separation. This feeling is both new and frightening. She tries to convince herself that she didn't come here to get bogged down in these emotions. She needs to pull herself together, focus, and find the strength to come to her senses, despite all the uncertainty. A gentleman approached her, looked closely, and asked what she was so lost in thought. His voice was calm, and there was a hint of concern in it, as if he wanted to help her understand her situation. He warned her to be careful, as haste and indecision could lead to trouble. His words sounded like genuine concern, not just a warning. The gentleman said that if she was not careful and attentive, she could get hurt, because there were many unexpected dangers around that she had not yet thought about. He asked her what exactly had happened to her, why she was so thoughtful and sad at that moment, as if something inside was bothering her. He also noted that if she didn't like the place or tree and it was causing her discomfort, He could order it to be removed so that she would feel calmer and more comfortable. The girl said she shouldn't worry, but the gentleman still insisted she be careful. He warned her that the blow could have left a scar, and that worried him. The girl assured that there were no injuries and there was no blood, but her forehead was slightly red after the blow, which looked a little painful, but not critical. For the first time, the gentleman felt what it was like to have a daughter. He seemed to see the world through new eyes and understood how deeply one can fear for a loved one. Now he was constantly afraid that she might get hurt. He even considered cutting down the tree she had hit to prevent future injuries. His attention was drawn to the huge number of flowers that were blooming around the dots, creating an almost magical atmosphere around them. The girl was frightened by the sudden attention and tried to explain something to the gentleman, trying to dispel his anxiety and fears. In addition, the gentleman wanted to share important information with her and suggested moving to a more secluded place to talk calmly. The girl agreed without any unnecessary questions, and now she did not have to justify herself about the flowers, which had previously seemed strange and disturbing to her. The gentleman asked whether the girl had actually shown signs of holy energy while they were in the temple, and what this could mean. The girl replied that she didn't seem to notice anything like that, but she became interested in why the gentleman was asking this question and what he knew about it. The gentleman noticed that since the girl had appeared in the garden, the mycescents had begun to bloom more vibrantly and profusely. These flowers are very sensitive to holiness, and their blooming was an unusual sign. The girl felt slightly embarrassed and couldn't figure out how to explain this connection to the gentleman. Her words stuck in her throat because she herself didn't really know how to describe it. The gentleman tried to calm her down, telling her there was no need to worry, as it was not her fault. The flowers were truly extraordinarily beautiful, and this only confirmed her uniqueness. In fact, the gentleman had another, more important question that he wanted to ask her, but he did not yet dare to say it directly. The girl was surprised to hear that he had a favor to ask of her. It was unexpected and caused a slight thrill inside. The gentleman asked if she could draw a portrait of one person. The girl asked again, not immediately understanding who exactly he meant. After her question, the gentleman wondered how safe it would be for her. Doubts and worries about the possible consequences flashed through his mind. Noah's house was considered something of a protected area, where outsiders were restricted from entering and the rules were strict and unwavering. If Esther were to get into trouble in this territory, the empire would have every right to punish her, and this added seriousness to the whole conversation. In the end, it turned out that it was Benjamin, a person from the inner circle, who noticed and seized the moment in time, which added intrigue to the situation. He spoke in a way that would simply make the gentleman think about it, without feeling pressured. It was a subtle hint, as no one wanted to impose or cause trouble. Everything was said very carefully, to leave freedom of choice. He himself knew the gentleman was unlikely to refuse, but suddenly the Duke said the girl should forget about it. The decision sounded unexpected, as if closing a door, although the situation was not yet clear and final. However, the girl unexpectedly agreed. Her answer was unexpected and confident, as if she had accepted the challenge without fear of the consequences. This dramatically changed the atmosphere and made everyone around her pause. In fact, it wasn't as difficult as it might have seemed. It didn't seem like a huge challenge to her, more like a routine matter, albeit one that required serious consideration. There was no fear in her gaze, only determination. He wanted her drawing specifically, and he insisted that she continue her studies because the situation could be dangerous. It wasn't just a request, but a serious warning about the potential risks. So he double-checked that she was truly ready for this. He wanted to make sure she fully understood what she was getting into, and that she had the inner strength to take on such a responsibility. The girl replied that she was ready and not afraid of death. It was a striking moment, as she demonstrated remarkable calm and an understanding that much in life doesn't always depend on fear. She said there was nothing to worry about, as if she was sure that everything would work out just as it should, and that she shouldn't be afraid of the future, whatever it might be. He emphasized that since she was his daughter, he would definitely protect her. It was a promise made with paternal care and love, leaving no doubt that she had strong support. The girl, in turn, asked if the people from the temple had said anything. Her question showed that she was closely monitoring what was happening and wanted to be sure everything was going well. The father replied that nothing had been said, and the girl was very happy about this. This meant the situation hadn't yet gotten out of control, and there was hope for peace and safety. It seemed like everything was under control, and no one was interfering with their plans. This brought relief and confidence that the next steps would proceed without complications. The girl is safe now, and that's the most important thing. Everything is going well, and no one is going to put her in danger as long as she's under reliable protection. The lady told her she would have to go on alone, unaccompanied. No one would accompany her, and she would have to walk this path alone, along a narrow path leading to a certain point. She was directed to follow the path straight ahead, without turning right or left, until she reached a hut that was hidden among the trees and branches, almost invisible from afar. The lady's main task is to draw a picture of the person who lives in this hut. She needs to memorize everything carefully so she can accurately convey the image of this inhabitant. She was given exactly 2 hours to complete this task, no more. After that, she was to leave the hut as quickly as possible, without lingering or attracting attention. A few minutes later, the girl had already approached an old hut made of roughly hewn boards, and without hesitation, she went inside to begin the task. Apparently, she'd gotten it right and hadn't gone astray. The place seemed very strange, almost mystical, and she had to be careful. It was a true protected area, a place where ordinary people could not easily enter, and where special rules were observed, protected by sacred powers. Despite their remoteness, all such protected areas were under the control of the temple, which maintained order and did not allow outsiders there. This hut seemed to be hidden from the whole world, concealed from the eyes of random passers-by, as if they were trying to conceal it from strangers and keep it a secret. The girl felt a sudden chill, as if the air around her had become thicker and colder, although the weather had not predicted such a change, and this caused her slight uneasiness. It seemed to her that the source of this cold was in the room on the left, from where an unpleasant cold stream emanated, as if something was hiding there, waiting for her arrival. She carefully approached the doors of that room and opened them, immediately feeling a sharp cold that seemed to penetrate into her body and make her shiver. Upon entering the room, she noticed someone lying on the bed. The body wasn't moving, but the presence was palpable. Someone was indeed there, motionless. Coming closer, she saw that it was a boy, sleeping or perhaps ill, lying quietly on the bed, as if guarded by the silence and cold around him. It was the very boy she'd seen in her dream. His image remained vivid and strange in her memory, like a sign she couldn't ignore. A quiet thrill welled up in her heart. But now was no time for reflection. She needed to focus on the main task. Time was running out, and every minute was precious. She kept repeating to herself that she couldn't get distracted. To begin, she carefully laid out all her painting supplies, brushes, paints, and paper. She wanted to be prepared, so that nothing would interfere with the process or distract from the main task. She felt a little nervous and awkward. It was the first time she'd ever drawn someone sleeping. It was unusual and a little strange, as she usually depicted living, awake people. The boy seemed incredibly handsome, even with his eyes closed. His features had a special softness and tenderness that captivated and drew the eye, as if he held some secret. Of all the people she knew, only Raphael could compare to him in beauty. Raphael had her own striking appearance that immediately caught the eye, but this boy was different, special in his own way. His Highness and his brothers were also attractive, with distinctive features and charisma. But the boy in the drawing had his own magic, which set him apart from his peers and made him unique. His face seemed like a perfect point, around which the entire world seemed to revolve. There was something captivating about this image that was impossible to describe in words. But she couldn't understand why he seemed familiar. Deep down, she was certain they'd met somewhere before, but her memory was silent, leaving only a vague sense of déjà vu. As she began to draw, she immediately remembered that his eyes should be closed. This was important, to preserve the exact atmosphere she saw in her dream, to convey the calm and mystery of the moment. Perhaps if he opens his eyes, it will be easier for her to recall the details she's been searching for. It will also help make the portrait more vivid and believable. I wonder how long he's been asleep. She doesn't know what to do next. After all, without his gaze, it's impossible to finish the portrait. Her thoughts return to him, and she dives back into her drawing, trying to capture the desired image. The work proceeds slowly, her strength gradually ebbing. She's already tired and can't remember how many hours have passed since she sat down at the easel in this room. His hand is outside, not under the blanket, and is probably quite cold by now. It's a small detail that haunts her, making her think about him even more deeply. Having made up her mind, she lightly touched his hand. In that moment, the realization dawned on her. She had absolutely no idea who he was, or why he was sleeping here alone. She reads in herself that he is truly lonely in this place, where there is silence and emptiness all around, and no one comes to visit him. She understands his loneliness perfectly well, because she once felt very lonely herself, locked in a dungeon where even time seemed to stand still. She wants him to get better and not experience this feeling anymore, so that he has someone next to him who would share all the difficulties with him. She clasped her hands tightly, determined to use her divine power to ease his suffering a little and bring more warmth and light into his life, despite the fragility of this world. Her efforts were focused on making him feel better, on easing his pain and bringing him some small glimmer of comfort, like a small spark of hope that could warm even the coldest of days. However, it seemed she had gotten too carried away and expended more divine energy than she intended. This was worrying, as her abilities had not yet been fully harnessed and her control remained unstable. She knew she wasn't fully used to her new power, and so it was important to finish the portrait quickly so as not to exhaust her energy reserves and harm herself or the person she was trying to help. Suddenly his hand grabbed hers, startling her, as he should have been asleep. She felt a tremor and confusion from the unexpected touch that broke the silence. The boy woke up and asked who she was. The girl immediately felt the need to apologize, realizing she shouldn't have disturbed his peace so suddenly. She had no idea what would happen next, and every moment of waiting seemed endless and filled with anxiety. The girl didn't expect him to wake up, and now she felt that she needed to find a way to apologize to ease the awkward situation that had arisen. He gripped her hand tightly, and the girl was filled with fear. His screams cut through the silence, and it seemed as if the entire world had shrunk to just those few terrifying seconds. The boy asked questions, demanding to understand what this girl was doing here in his room, and why she appeared at such an unexpected moment. Esther explained that her only task was to paint his portrait, nothing more, a simple job that did not involve any surprises. The girl apologized again, insisting that she had not known he was sleeping and had not wanted to disturb him, trying to make amends for her sudden appearance and the commotion it had caused. The boy was clearly surprised to hear talk of a portrait and immediately felt he would never have allowed himself such familiarity. It seemed impossible and unacceptable to him. The girl noticed that her task was simply to draw him, but something was bothering her thoughts. She couldn't fully concentrate on her work because questions and doubts were piling up in her head. She asked him to keep his eyes open while she painted, so the portrait would be vivid and real. She wanted to capture every moment and preserve the sincerity of his gaze. At that moment, the boy realized this wasn't just a task for her, but something more, and he cautiously asked her name. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of curiosity in it. The girl replied that her name was Esther. The name sounded soft and slightly mysterious, as if concealing a whole story yet to be told. As he fell asleep, he smiled, humming to himself, and wondering if the girl's name really was Esther. It seemed strange to him, as if she were part of a dream or a fantasy. The boy believed it was all just a dream, and the girl didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. She looked at him with slight bewilderment, as if she didn't understand the meaning of his words. The girl quietly asked him to let go of her hand, as if she needed a little more freedom to feel more confident and calm in this strange moment. The boy, visibly embarrassed, said he'd simply forgotten to let go of her hand. He hadn't meant to cause her discomfort, but he'd involuntarily lingered on the touch. He noted that she was there specifically to draw him. This admission sounded a little surprised, as if he was beginning to perceive her presence in a new way. The girl felt him not only squeeze her hand but tighten it. He quietly said that he was grateful to her for coming so far for him, and it touched her deeply. Benjamin really did his best to ensure that all she had to do was draw his eyes, and then he could lie back down and rest. This was important, because he didn't want to disturb her any further. The boy didn't understand why the girl said everything was so urgent and that she'd only been given 2 hours to do everything. He wondered why she was in such a rush and worried about that particular amount of time. He explained that he understood. She wasn't allowed to stay around any longer. It was harsh, but apparently those were the rules, and the girl had to leave on time, even if she wanted to stay. The guy asked if she could come another day and finish her portrait, since not everything could be done in such a short time, and it was important to know what to do next. The girl had said that the eyes in the portrait had to be open, so if he closed them again, she simply wouldn't be able to finish the drawing this time. This created a problem. Then the guy said that it would be better for her to come later, when he was ready, and then she could calmly finish her portrait without rushing or inconvenience. The girl was confused and couldn't understand what was happening to him, why he was acting this way, and why it all seemed so strange to her. She didn't know how to react to his words. The boy closed his eyes and asked if she would come again, indicating he was willing to wait. The girl realized she would most likely have to come back and finish the job another time. But deep down, she felt that it was wrong to do this, that there was no point in putting it off until later, because it all had to be done right away and without unnecessary delays. She admitted that she hadn't actually come here by chance, but rather because of a request that compelled her to come to this particular place. It was an important matter, and she knew she couldn't refuse. The guy, seeing her confusion, said nothing serious had happened. He promised to explain everything she was wondering and try to make things easier and more understandable for her. The girl did not understand at all why he was behaving so unusually. He did not let go of her hand, and there was some strangeness in his behavior that seemed unusual and even a little mysterious to her. Suddenly, the boy said he felt ill, and the girl immediately became frightened, not knowing what had happened to him. She felt anxious and tried to figure out what could have happened. She carefully asked him where exactly it hurt, and he admitted he suffered from an illness that couldn't be cured with conventional medication. It was a severe, chronic problem he rarely talked about. The girl was a little embarrassed and said that she understood his condition and sympathized with him, because such illnesses are always difficult to bear, especially when it seems that there is no hope. The boy noticed that he had been alone since birth, without real friends or loved ones who could support or truly understand him in difficult times. The girl replied that it was very sad and a pity that he had no friends, because every person deserves to have people around him who understand and support him. The guy smiled and said that he didn't expect her to be so kind and gentle, and her compliance and attention surprised him and made a good impression. The girl admitted that she was not as simple as she seemed, and that she herself was very happy about their meeting, which, according to her, became something important and unexpectedly pleasant for her. As she walked, her attention was drawn to the surrounding nature. Everything around her seemed quiet and calm, as if she were in the heart of an untouched nature reserve, where greenery covered everything and no one was in sight. The surroundings were truly empty, as if this place had long been forgotten. The green expanses seemed to stretch on forever, creating an atmosphere of solitude and peace, as if this world had remained the same from the very beginning. It seemed to her that this boy who lived here might experience a special joy from the opportunity to simply be in nature, breathe fresh air, and forget about the hustle and bustle of the outside world. Her main goal was simple: to come here to have a portrait painted. For her, it was a way to express her feelings and capture a moment that felt important and touching. How long this boy spent here, completely alone, remained a mystery. No one knew how long he had been left to his own devices, far from people and the familiar world. She remembered her own moments of captivity, when she was locked up and screaming at the top of her lungs, hoping to be heard and released, although there was terrible anguish and despair in her soul. But no one really responded. No one came to help, and all she could do was sit on the cold floor and let out screams that dissolved into the void. The boy smiled, a flicker of kindness in his gaze. He looked at her carefully, as if trying to understand what was going on in her soul and thoughts. He showed interest and asked what she was thinking about. She felt embarrassed again and said she wasn't thinking about anything. He smiled and asked if she would come back again. The girl blushed with embarrassment at hearing that he wanted to see her again. Her heart began to beat faster, but she didn't know what to say in response, as everything seemed new and unfamiliar. He carefully took her hand, and she was at a loss for what to do. She knew the decision was beyond her control, as making such decisions on her own was difficult and frightening. So she replied that she would first ask those who were watching her if she could visit him again. She needed permission to take this step without causing problems. The guy smiled and said it was very sweet and made him happy. He asked her to promise to try to come again, as he wanted them to develop a friendship. A few minutes later, the girl was ready to leave. Time had flown by, and she needed to return, but the hope of meeting again remained in her heart. The boy said goodbye to her and said he would wait for her return. He watched her go, hoping that she would indeed come again so they could become closer. The boy who slept in the sacred preserve seemed mysterious and special. He seemed to live in his own world, surrounded by silence and tranquility. He looked mysterious and lonely, as if he were destined for a special destiny. His solitude set him apart from others, making him even more attractive and unusual. If the girl had been allowed to visit him again, everything could have changed for the better. This meeting could have been the beginning of a true friendship and mutual understanding. Then they could become friends, and the boy would feel better. Together, they would be able to cope more easily with loneliness and find joy in communication. Meanwhile, at the temple, the master greeted Nurse Fian. As always, they had high hopes for her. The girl calmly replied that she would never let them down and was determined to help anyone who needed her care. She approached the saint and introduced herself, observing all the ceremonies. The girl felt a responsibility to the saint, understanding that her words were important and that this communication could change many things in the future. The nurse noticed the woman standing, though she had expected to see her sitting or lying down. This surprised her. Usually after such trials, the saint's strength quickly left her, but now she stood as if unharmed. Raphael entered the room and quietly asked what had happened to the saint. Her voice was filled with concern and curiosity. It seemed strange that after drinking poison, the woman could retain her strength and composure. The girl quickly realized something unusual had happened. She was surprised to see the saint standing in the middle of the room, even though the poison should have completely drained her of energy and strength, as it had done before. Considering that the previous dose of poison had been significantly higher, she was certain the saint would not have been able to rise and move after such an ordeal. This meant that something was now changing in her condition or destiny. The saint turned to Raphael and announced that the goddess had conveyed an important message. Her voice was firm and calm, as if she were confident in what she was saying and expected everyone to listen attentively. The woman announced that the goddess had chosen a girl destined to become the next saint. This announcement caused a wave of surprise and tension among those present, for it signaled the beginning of a new era and great changes. The girl was tasked with finding the heir to the goddess's powers and saving the empire from impending disaster. The responsibility was enormous, and the mission itself required courage and determination to preserve light and order in the realm. Raphael couldn't understand what disaster the saint was speaking of. She thought the goddess might have been signaling her approaching end, a sign of change, but the threat itself still seemed incomprehensible and distant. Raphael moved closer to hear better. The woman declared it a true miracle. The goddess had spoken to her personally and asked who would become the next saint, as if predicting her fate. Then Raphael decided the saint had completely lost her mind. Such words seemed absurd and unreal to her, as if someone had become lost in their own visions and could no longer distinguish truth from fiction. The woman continued, saying that the next saint had come from the very bottom and risen to a high position. Her eyes were the color of roses, reminiscent of delicate petals, and around them were summer fields full of light and warmth. She described how the saint's chestnut hair seemed to be saturated with dust, like the earth beneath her feet, a reminder of her connection with nature and Mother Earth, as if the soil itself had blessed her for this great work. Raphael was stunned, barely believing what she heard. The words sounded so strange that she felt as if she had entered another world, where meaning was hidden behind a veil of riddles and symbols. The saint didn't understand what she was talking about. Everything seemed confusing to her, as if she were speaking in riddles no one could solve. Then Raphael asked the saint if she was certain that she was the source of these prophecies. After all, a new saint had just been painted, and she wanted to confirm the truth of what she had said. The woman was surprised by the question and admitted she was shocked to be still alive and able to talk about such things. This gave her words special weight, as she seemed unusually vulnerable. Raphael once again checked to see if the next saint really did have rose-colored eyes and dust on her chestnut hair. She needed to be sure this wasn't just a fantasy, but a genuine prophecy. Sepsia, though a saint, could not verify these details, as the members of Duke Braun's family always looked completely different, and such features were never found among them. In the end, the saint admitted that perhaps she was simply delirious in her sleep, and that it was all a figment of her imagination, because the visions were too strange and defied logic. She said she couldn't be the next saint, because her life was still going on. Saints usually come after they've left this world, and she was still too young and alive to take that place. She added that it was still too early for such events. It would be better for her to rest and gain strength now, as rushing into such a matter would be wrong and dangerous for the girl herself. There's an ancient tradition in the Braun family. Every third generation is born a saint. This is ordained by the goddess herself, and therefore the next saint must be a child of the Raphael line, for it is the will of fate. But before them all stood a girl with unusual rose-colored eyes and soft chestnut hair. Her gaze was distinctive, and she was clearly different from the others, arousing questions and interest from those around her. Raphael needed to know who exactly they were talking about. It was important for her to understand the gravity of the situation and her destiny, which awaited her in the future without question. When Raphael was very little, or even earlier, she and the one speaking would ask her to listen carefully and remember everything she said. It was like a message that could not be forgotten, because her fate depended on it. Her birth carried a special mission. She was destined to become a saint. This was not just a beautiful dream, but a reality that shaped her life and path from the very beginning. Therefore, Raphael was not to even entertain the thought of another life, where she could choose or change her destiny. Everything that was destined for her was to be fulfilled without fail. Her father firmly told her to remember one important thing. Her primary purpose was to be a saint. This wasn't just a word, but an integral part of her being and her future path. She was destined to become a saint. It was her destiny, and there was no other choice. Destiny guided her steps, and everyone around her expected her to accept it and fulfill the mission entrusted to her. The girl smiled, because for the first time she felt that her father truly understood her. This realization warmed her heart, giving her confidence in her abilities and the path she would take. She realized she had understood him correctly, and would now strive to become a saint, fulfilling the important task he had given her. For her, this was not just a promise, but a destiny she was destined to accept. At that moment, the father didn't yet express his pride, but Sepsis, now a saint, spoke quite differently. Her words made him think that the path would be difficult, but necessary for the girl. The grown girl knew that the goddess had once promised the Braun family that every third generation would bear a saint. This ancient legend became part of the family history, passed down from generation to generation. And since then, this tradition has never been broken. Everything has followed its predetermined course. This gave the family strength and reinforced their faith in the sanctity and destiny they were destined to embrace. It was therefore clear that Raphael was destined to become a saint, and even the thought that this might be a mistake or a misunderstanding seemed impossible and implausible. On the way back, the girl met Cain. She smiled at him, feeling a certain joy and lightness in this brief moment of meeting, which distracted her, if only for a little while, from her serious thoughts. She greeted him warmly, and he responded in kind, showing her the attention and respect that was important to her at that moment when she felt lonely. Cain announced that he had brought a letter from the mistress, as well as gifts. This caused the girl a slight unease. She was worried about how she would cope with it all alone, as the responsibility seemed too great. Raphael understood the situation and said she would respond soon. The boy noticed that his lordship had conveyed the message to her, which added significance to the whole situation. It was important that everything reached the girl in time. It was said that his lordship had important business near the temple. He promised to visit the girl in person soon, as he was eager to witness her progress and the changes she had achieved with his own eyes. The girl hopefully asked if her father would really come. Hearing the confirmation, she was genuinely delighted and felt a warmth in her heart, having long awaited this meeting. She also asked Cain if there was any more news or information that could reassure her or give her an understanding of how things would develop further. Cain noted with regret that the person they were waiting for a response from was still asleep. Because of this, they were unable to obtain any information or confirmation, which caused concern. The girl was perplexed. 3 months had already passed, and he should have woken up, but he hadn't. She couldn't understand why everything had dragged on like this and what was really going on. Although she understood everything, the girl could do nothing about it. Her feelings were conflicted. She accepted the situation, but deep down she hoped for a miracle and a quick change. Cain didn't say anything directly, but it was clear that relations between the imperial family and the temple had deteriorated. This hung like a shadow over everyone, causing them to worry and anxiously await change. The priests stopped paying him attention and care, gradually distancing themselves from his illness. Their hope for a cure was fading, and they no longer saw the point in wasting their energy on his treatment. Thus, gradually, his abandonment became complete. Noah suffered from a very rare and complex disease that virtually no one knew how to treat. This condition was seriously life-threatening, and without proper intervention, he could soon die, leaving his loved ones in anxiety and despair. Treating such an affliction required the intervention of the high priests, for only their power and knowledge could help Noah. Turning to them was the only chance, though hope remained faint, as recovery seemed almost impossible. Without the holy energy that sustained his life, Noah couldn't survive. Raphael understood this very well and realized that every minute without this support was fatal for him, so she wasted no time in trying to help him in any way she could. Raphael warned Cain that he should return in 3 days to receive a response to his letter. She was certain this time was necessary for the high priests to make a decision and determine the next course of treatment, even though uncertainty plagued everyone. She also announced that she intended to visit Noah in person this coming weekend. This was an important visit, meant to support the patient and show that he was remembered and cared for, despite the difficult circumstances and dangers. Raphael asked Cain to prepare everything necessary for the trip in advance. Cain was surprised by this request, as he understood that organizing a trip in the current situation would be very difficult and that many things could go wrong. Now was not the best time for such a trip. Raphael was a contender, and going to the master could cause serious problems and gossip. Everyone understood that any move had to be carefully considered and cautious. But Raphael abruptly interrupted him, declaring that nothing would happen, since Noah was her fiancé. She made it clear there would be no problems between them, and that her intentions were serious. Then Raphael asked if he really believed she had no right to see Noah. Her voice sounded confident, as if defending her right to be with the one she loved. She explained that she would be extremely careful, and asked Cain not to mention the upcoming meeting to his father. Raphael wanted to keep it a secret to avoid any unnecessary trouble. She desperately wanted Noah, her fiancé, to wait for her and for their bond to remain strong no matter what. This desire gave her the strength to wait and hope. They would definitely see each other again soon. Raphael was sure of it, and every day she waited for the moment of meeting so that she could finally be next to Noah. Meanwhile, Noah was no longer sleeping. He was feeling much better after the treatment. He was gradually coming to his senses and regaining his strength. No matter how much holy power they poured into him, he had never felt such vitality and energy as he did now. It filled him with hope and life. He really wanted to see Esther again, dreaming of a meeting and hoping for her to appear next to him soon. At that moment, Benjamin came to him and was very surprised to see that Noah was awake. He hadn't expected to see him awake. The guy greeted Noah warmly, and Benjamin asked when he woke up, because he didn't expect Noah to be up by the time he arrived. The boy apologized for startling him and asked how long he'd been asleep. He wanted to know how long this period of sleep had lasted so he could better assess the situation. This time, the boy spent 3 whole months asleep, the longest sleep of his life. Such a long rest was a surprise and a special occasion for him. Noah asked Benjamin if he'd invited Esther to his home. He wanted to know if he was in touch with the girl and how she was treated in the Duke's household. Benjamin replied that he had already informed the lady of his illness. But first, he decided to find out how the gentleman was feeling after such a long sleep and the ordeal he had endured. Noah admitted that he felt better than ever. With Esther by his side, he no longer needed any priests or outside help. Her presence gave him confidence and strength. Benjamin breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted to tell Noah who Esther was, but Noah already knew the girl was the Duke's adopted daughter, which surprised him. Benjamin was stunned and couldn't understand how the boy could have learned this. It turned out that Noah's dreams were prophetic and revealed important information. Noah pondered what to do now. He needed Esther to survive, but he doubted the Duke would allow her to remain by his side, creating a difficult situation. He simply asked Benjamin to arrange another meeting with Esther, wanting to see her again. It was important, so he insisted she be invited again, no matter what. Benjamin doubted the Duke would agree to this. He had a complex personality, and such requests were rarely accepted lightly, especially when it came to the Duke's personal desires. Benjamin also reported receiving a message from Lady Raphael. She planned to visit the Duke this coming weekend, which could affect his plans and mood. Raphael evoked nothing but indifference in the Duke. He felt no feelings for her, making their relationship more of a formality than anything meaningful. Having understood the situation, he asked Benjamin to try to convince the Duke of the need for this meeting, to do everything possible to achieve agreement. He said that the importance of Esther needed to be conveyed to the Duke, and that she needed to be there as soon as possible, without unnecessary delay. They were still involved with Raphael, but it was time to break off this cold and meaningless relationship, to make room for real feelings. Only by breaking up with her will the Duke be able to be with Esther for real, and this will be the new stage in his life that he has long been waiting for. Ben reported that young Master Judy had successfully arrived at the academy and had already joined the fencing team. Everything had gone smoothly, and he was now beginning to immerse himself in his studies and training. Esther promised to write every week for 3 weeks. Her father was confident she would cope with her new responsibilities perfectly and quickly adapt to her new surroundings. Ben also wanted to tell the master something else about the tutor who would be working with Esther. This information could prove important for the Duke's future plans. The interview with the teacher went well, and Ben said he would be contacted in a few days for a final decision. Everything was moving toward choosing the right mentor. The Duke hoped that the chosen teacher would please Esther and be able to help her in her studies, because much depended on this, both her future and the peace of mind of the family. Suddenly, the Duke noticed Esther and paused. She seemed a little lonely at this hour, and he wondered what could have brought her here at such an hour. He wondered why she was alone and what she was doing at that moment, since Esther was usually surrounded by people or busy with other things. This question haunted him. From that day on, Esther's image constantly appeared in his thoughts. He couldn't forget her, and this feeling gradually grew stronger, taking up more and more space in the Duke's soul. Esther didn't even learn the name of the boy who had caught her interest. This added a touch of mystery to their relationship and made the Duke wonder about future encounters. Regardless of who this boy was, Esther wanted to get to know him better. Perhaps she could even ask him to be her friend. Such a move could change a lot for her. Suddenly, the father addressed the girl with an important message. He said he had come to tell her good news that concerned her future and could change many things. He asked her to come with him for a minute so they could discuss everything in a more relaxed setting. He wanted her to hear this information in person and be able to ask questions. The girl agreed without hesitation and asked if the news would be related to the teacher and his future fate, because this was very important to her. My father explained that this teacher was the academy's top student and was now practicing and teaching others. Although he was young and inexperienced, he had great talent. The girl is surprised every time, because no one before had treated the teacher as caringly as her father does now, who does much more for him than anyone before. She is sincerely grateful for such support and promised to make every effort to live up to her father's expectations and not disappoint him with her perseverance. Her father said it was wonderful and that he was very glad that she understood the importance of the situation and was ready for new challenges along the way. Denny didn't understand anything, but everyone was already waiting for Esther's teacher to arrive. There was a sense of excitement in the house, though no one really said it out loud. Everyone knew something important was about to happen. Father seemed calm, but his anxiety was palpable. He claimed he wasn't nervous at all, but his gaze revealed something else entirely. No one could understand why he was so worried. Denny wanted to do something with someone too, but his father reminded him that he himself had said it was better to focus on solitude and one's own thoughts. This was the rule they tried to adhere to. Despite this, Denny said that sometimes Esther's lessons cover topics he's already covered, so he'd be interested in joining in to review and reinforce his knowledge. He usually disliked group classes because they made it hard to concentrate. But now the situation seemed serious, and Danny knew he couldn't skip class. At that moment, a maid announced that the carriage carrying the tutor had just entered the estate. The news immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the house. The master immediately ordered someone to meet the teacher so as not to delay the start of the lesson and to show respect to the guest. Everything proceeded quickly and orderly. A few minutes later, the teacher came out to them. He introduced himself as James, a young man with kind eyes. He would be teaching Esther today, and everyone had been preparing for this moment. The girl greeted him with a slight smile, and the Duke nodded welcomingly in response. He pointed out the direction they should take to get where they needed to go. The atmosphere was calm and friendly. He then invited me to get to know him better, introducing his children, whom he trusts completely. It was clear that family is an important part of his life, and he values them above all else. Denny introduced himself first, explaining that his twin brother, Judy, was currently studying at the academy. He was followed by the girl, who also calmly and confidently introduced herself, not hiding her youth. She was the youngest in the family, but her voice rang with confidence. She introduced herself simply, without unnecessary words, as if she knew she was accepted for who she was, and this gave her courage. Overall, he'd left a good impression so far, though it was unclear what would happen next. His demeanor seemed natural, without any forced formality, which was endearing. He said he'd simply demonstrate the classes today so everyone could understand the process. They'd discuss the contract later, once it was clearer whether this collaboration was right for them. The Duke agreed with this plan, noting that it was a reasonable approach. All parties agreed to proceed this way, taking their time and discussing everything carefully after familiarizing themselves with the educational process. The classroom was in the part of the building where their guide led them. The room was spacious and bright, with large windows letting in natural light. The atmosphere was conducive to learning. James said he had some unusual questions. He also wanted to know if the gentleman would be present during the lesson with the children, as it was important for him to understand who was involved in the educational process. He took his children's education seriously and decided to inquire about attending their classes himself. This desire demonstrated his involvement and responsibility as a parent. James had to convince everyone of the need for his involvement to be able to assess the situation. He seemed genuinely concerned about his children's future and wanted to help them do better in school. The teacher announced that the lesson would begin immediately. The mood in the class became focused, everyone prepared to listen attentively and work hard, as this was a crucial moment for understanding new knowledge. During the lesson, they established a good rapport. Denny tried to explain the material in a way that Esther could easily understand and absorb the new information, which made the learning process more productive. Austin had heard the history of the empire and the myth of the goddess Esther many times before in Temple. Despite this, she was interested in learning everything anew, as the teacher skillfully presented the material and made the story lively and engaging. Gaining new knowledge was truly enjoyable and engaging. The lessons sparked an interest in history and helped students see the connections between the past and the present, which inspired them. Saint Sepsis's influence manifested itself in the special relationship between the temple and the empire. The next lesson was devoted to the study of the four main families of the empire: which promised to be an important and informative stage in their education. With this lesson, the class concluded. The students left the classroom with new knowledge and anticipation for the next lesson, ready to continue their journey into the world of imperial history and culture. They seem to be consumed by curiosity and eager to learn more. Their desire to learn is growing, and it's even noticeable in their eyes, filled with a thirst for knowledge and anticipation of new discoveries. They dared to ask if the lesson was over, as it seemed the material should have ended there. The teacher, hearing their question, was clearly surprised and hadn't expected such interest and persistence. The teacher decided to continue and said that if they wanted, they could go a little further and delve deeper into the topic. His voice softened, understanding that the students truly wanted to move forward and learn more. The signal that the open lesson had been a success came from the Duke, who expressed his approval and satisfaction with the teacher's work, which was a good sign for everyone present. The teacher instructed me to open my textbook to page 54, where the 4 main families that made up the Austin Empire were described in detail, an important section for understanding history and the structure of the world. After some time, the butlers were already meeting the young Master Judy, greeting him with respect and smiles, which spoke of his status and position in the palace. Judy noticed that 3 weeks had passed since they last saw each other. Much had changed in that time, and he felt a longing for the company of his loved ones. Time passed quickly, but their meetings became less frequent. The butler asked how Judy was doing at the academy. He explained that at first, as a newbie, it had been very difficult, and everything had seemed complicated. But now he'd become more resilient and stronger, and had learned to cope with the stress. He also asked how his brother, sister, and father were doing. Judy replied that his family was doing well, and he now seemed even more confident and important in their eyes. He felt he had grown and become stronger thanks to the new challenges, and his family's support helped him move forward despite the difficulties. Judy also mentioned that they needed to stop somewhere before heading home. This was due to the need to repay a debt he had once incurred. He knew this matter couldn't be put off and decided to resolve it as soon as possible. Earlier, the maid Esther had told him about the situation with Sebastian and Judy. She described everything in detail so that Judy would be fully informed. This news was important to him and made him think about what was happening. Judy was extremely angry because he found Mr. Sebastian's behavior too rude and unacceptable. He believed that such actions were not just a mistake, but a genuine breach of decorum that could not go unnoticed. Judy asked the maid exactly what Sebastian had said, and she told him the whole truth, without reservation. She described every word and gesture so that he understood the gravity of the situation and could decide what to do next. It eventually became clear that Sebastian had also behaved terribly by breaking his promise. Judy considered it a betrayal and could not forgive such an attitude, especially considering how much their word and commitment meant to them. However, what outraged Judy most was that Sebastian had insulted his sister, calling her a beggar and a ragamuffin. This was completely unacceptable, and he considered such an act unforgivable and insulting to the entire family. He searched for him carefully, because he was very well hidden. The guys nearby were a little frightened when they saw Judy's stern and menacing look, as if he were ready for a fight. They asked who this guy really was, and Judy replied that, of course, he was the one looking for Sebastian. It was obvious to everyone, and his confidence made everyone believe it. Judy asked them if they'd seen Sebastian and where he was now. It was important for him to get precise information, so as not to lose the trail and continue the search without delay. The boys thought this was odd and wondered what would happen if Judy really did know the answer. He calmly said they'd better answer honestly and not hide the truth from him. Otherwise, Judy was already starting to get irritated and angry, showing that his patience was wearing thin. He clearly didn't want anyone trying to lie to him or lead him astray. Sebastian thought about Judy and remembered how well he'd done at the academy camp. Now he was also looking for Sebastian, which made him wonder why the puppy was acting so persistent. It felt like Sebastian had done something he needed to apologize for, even though he was sure he hadn't. But Judy's behavior seemed far too serious for a normal situation. At that moment, the butler approached Sebastian and announced that young Master Judy wished to speak with him personally. This caused Sebastian some anxiety, but he prepared himself for the meeting. Sebastian made it clear he was gone and had no further obligations. Anyone who thought they could just interfere should wait. He needed to be shown who was boss and put in his place. But the crowd shouted, demanding that he come out immediately, while he dragged a young man behind him, as if protecting or hiding him. He felt relieved when he finally saw Sebastian, having waited for this moment for a long time with both hope and anxiety. People noticed that Sebastian didn't think they should discuss important issues, and this clearly irritated them, hinting at the need for a serious conversation. Sebastian looked frightened and insisted that he had no bad thoughts, while Judy reproached him for being insolent towards his sister. Sebastian's fear grew, and in response, Judy mercilessly hit everyone who stood nearby, showing that he would not tolerate disobedience. Judy told Sebastian to go home quietly and not hide in the corners of the mansion, because he knew too well where to find him. Despite all the difficulties, Judy was sure that Sebastian knew about the actions committed against his sister and would not be able to hide from it. Judy questioned whether Sebastian feared the consequences of his words and actions, condemning his insolence and provocations towards his sister.